back to the Stick 'em Up podcast. Brundi, it has been a week.
Yeah. It's been a week. It's been a day. It's been a month. But the craziness of the trade deadline is now finally over. Over the last week and a half, we've just had a whole bunch of stuff happen, and we've got lots to discuss today. I think we're kind of only covering the big major contract extensions and trades in this one, and then kind of more of the minor trades we'll be discussing in a later episode that'll come out not too long after this one.
Yeah, there was I know in the build up to this trade deadline there was a lot of talk of like there's not many high value targets kind of. And then as we got close to the deadline, it was a little more obvious of which teams were or weren't going to make the playoffs. And then, guys like Jake Gensel, guys like Noah Hannafin, kind of, it became more obvious that they were going to be on the market versus staying with their teams. So it actually turned out to be a pretty interesting trade deadline week, let alone the actual day. So we've got no shortage of stuff to go over right now.
Yeah. Before, I think the way we're going to do is we're going to go through the extensions that have happened, and then we'll kind of go through the bigger trades. But before we do that, the really only kind of piece of news outside of this is news broke a couple days ago that the Devils were relieving Lindy Ruff of his head coaching duties, and they named associate coach Travis Green as the interim coach for the rest of the season. I want to say I'm kind of shocked, but at the same time, I'm not really about this firing here.
Yeah, I mean, after he turned the team around so much last year, it really felt like he was going to be, he was kind of locking himself in. Like he was on the chopping block, and all of a sudden he looked as safe as the best of them in the league. And then, I mean, like you've said before, you had the Devils this year to pick to win the Cup and the President's Trophy.
Yeah, I was all in on them.
Right now, it looks like they're not even going to make the playoffs. They're on a couple game losing streak, or at least in their last 6 games, they've got at least 4 losses. So it's a rough time in New Jersey, and as much as it sucks, I definitely think Lindy Ruff will get picked up somewhere else. But I think it's you can't blame the GM for making the move.
Yeah. I mean, I really think it's one of those situations where the downfall of this team was the goaltending, and that's something that management never addressed or anything. Unfortunately, that's kind of what resulted in Lindy Ruff going. I mean, it's when you've got goalies that just can't make a save for the life of them, you can't get that big save, or one of their dozen goalies they've used this year, they couldn't get a single one of them to go on a hot streak and steal a 5 or 6 games in a row for the team or something. So it was just an unfortunate situation for Lindy Ruff. It's in my opinion, it's very similar to Todd McLellan, who, funny enough, him and Lindy Ruff were the 2 coaches this season, where at the beginning of the season they were given contract extensions, and neither one of them even made it to the trade deadline this year, despite those extensions. And again, I think 2 great coaches where it's really management kind of put them in a position where, it was, you either, take this rock and make lemonade, or you're done. Like it's tough, but Lindy Ruff will easily find his way to another team, whether that's as a coach, or he joins in some kind of management role or some kind of player development role or whatever it is. Obviously he'll land on his feet somewhere, but man, when you're looking at the market for coaches now, I mean, we go on about how we go back and forth on it, because we say, they recycle the same coaches, but then we want new guys, but there's a lot of good coaches available right now.
Yeah, and that's the thing, Lindy Ruff clearly knows what he's doing, and I think a coach of his caliber should get picked up by another NHL team. But there is definitely quite a few cases of coaches in the past that, just absolutely sucked really on a team floundering for a few years, and then they get let go, and then they just get picked up by another one and they're not good, and then they get let go, and they just
Yeah.
keep not getting results, but they keep finding more jobs.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that confuse me. But when Lindy Ruff inevitably gets picked up by another team, I will not be shocked.
Yeah, I mean, right now it's, the coaches that we've seen fired this year. I mean, kind of aside from Minnesota, I think a bit like you've got Todd McClellan, Jay Woodcroft, uh, Craig Berube, and now Lindy Ruff. Like that's four pretty good high end coaches that will be available. So it'll be interesting to see once the off season hits. I assume Travis Green probably isn't. They're not locked. The Devils aren't committing to him long term. So you know what? I think a match made in heaven might honestly be you bring in a Jay Woodcroft there in New Jersey and let him kind of run the magic that he did with Edmonton for a couple of years, and I think that could be successful for him.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, they're not very different teams. They got not enough goaltending. They got young, really talented, fast superstars, and the team's all about offense.
Yeah,
And
all about offense.
And maybe the Devils don't have that, that McDavid Draisaitl, that top elite talent for scoring.
They got
a lot. They got a lot more depth. So, and they got more depth on forwards and defense, I think. So, it's it could definitely be a fit there for sure.
So aside from that, we'll kind of just jump into the contract extensions, some of the signings that happened. I think we kind of, I don't know if we wrapped up. I don't know how we wrapped up last episode. Ignore that. But we did talk about how there was a potential deal that would send Elias Pettersson to the Hurricanes. Obviously, that didn't happen. And then it rumored that, the Pettersson, the Canucks were meeting back at the table to hammer out a contract extension. And wouldn't you know, the very next day, it happened. Elias Pettersson re-signing with the Vancouver Canucks, signing an 8-year contract extension, a total amount of $92.8 million, which comes out to $11.6 million for his cap hit per year.
Yep.
I mean,
that's a lot of money, but Elias Pettersson is a phenomenal player. He's one of those guys that's kind of like a fringe top 10 player in the league. Some people have him in there, some people have him in the top 20, but very few people are not going to have him in their top 20, top 25 players in the league. He is pretty solidly in that spot, I think, at this point. And I mean, you could argue about nickel and diming it, but if people would have been cheering in the streets over 8 by 10 mil, then I don't think you can be upset about 11.6, especially with the cap going up,
Yeah, exactly. It's the cap going up is a huge thing.
Yeah. I think you just got to celebrate. You got Elias Pettersson for the next 9 years, or at least the remainder of this season, and then 8 more. That's good for the Canucks.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it's funny because looking back at when Nathan MacKinnon signed his contract extension that came in with a cap hit of $12.6 million per year, which made him the highest paid player in the league. A lot of people thought it was funny how he took $100,000 more than what McDavid was getting. So he just edged out McDavid for it. And now we see with Elias Pettersson where he signs and it's 11.6 per year. And earlier in the year is, fellow countryman, half, I guess. I don't know what you want to call Nylander. But William Nylander signed with 8 years with Toronto at 11.5. I got to imagine once Pettersson saw that, he's like, you know what? This is probably where I feel like we would have came together, but I'm sure as hell getting more than Nylander. So
yeah,
I don't think that's a coincidence. I think that's kind of a pride thing. And you know what? I still think Pettersson probably could have even gone up to 12, honestly.
I think they would have given him 8x12.
Yeah,
There's no way they
totally
trade him
agree.
over that, over 400,000 per year.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely not.
No, and I I did hear it rumored. I can't remember if it was confirmed or not. But it sounded like Elias Pettersson throughout the year. It was almost like the reverse of the Stamkos situation, where the GM was like, "We're not even going to talk about extensions until later." It sounds like Pettersson told his agent, "Don't even contact the team. Don't talk to them about an extension until the offseason. I don't want to worry about it." It wasn't I don't want to sign here. It was I'm not worrying about it right now. And
I'm here to focus on playing right now.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if, rumors came out about is he going to Carolina? Is he doing this? And maybe it was like, okay, fine, whatever. Let's talk about it. What's this? 11.6 sounds good. Do it.
Well, yeah, because I think the Canucks are in a position where they got that offer from Carolina, and it sounds like it was again, we will never know what it was, but like it was obviously an incredible enough offer to have the Canucks being like, you know what, we're willing to do this. And I think, when they had the deal in place and were ready, they said, you know what, let's go talk to Pettersson, be like, hey, you know what, we've got this deal on the table for you. Either,
but we'd rather keep the best player in the trade.
Yeah. So it's like, can we just say, let's stop kicking the can down the road. Let's just sit down, get it figured out. And they got it figured out. And this whole thing occurred over in the span of like 3 days.
Yeah.
From the point of
so quick.
Like they're not going to discuss a deal till the offseason now. Oh shit, he might be going to Carolina. And now boom, 8-year extension is signed the next day. It happened quickly, and I think it's because Vancouver got an offer that they were excited about, but they said, you know what? If he wants to sign with us, we're going to make him do it right now. And if he doesn't, we're not going to risk not being able to get this deal again in the offseason. So,
yeah.
And
I wonder how serious they were about it, because, there was rumors about the trades, and it was talked about between the two teams. I wonder how serious either team was, or how close it was to actually happening.
It sounds like it was, from what I heard, it sounded like it was almost pretty much like a done deal. Like both sides were comfortable with everything with the deal. They were happy.
That's crazy.
And so I think that's what really led the Canucks management to be like, you know what, we got to figure out if he's willing to sign right now, and if not, we gotta pull the trigger on this. And obviously Pettersson wanted to stick around, and that's the route they went with. And you know what, regardless what the package was, I think it's the right move. I think when you've got
absolutely
a guy like Elias Pettersson, you don't trade him. I don't even think he's reached his prime. He's not even reached the best he's going to be. So to move him out,
in the middle of a President's Trophy consideration season, like
they've held top in the Pacific for over incredible. 80 days.
Yeah. So there's no reason for them to change the course that drastically. So
yeah,
I think it's a great deal for the Canucks, and good for Pettersson for getting his money.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm a big Nylander fan, but when you compare Nylander making 11.5 for the next 8 years after this one, Pettersson make 11.6 for 8 years after this, and Pettersson's younger. He's a center, and I think he's quite a bit better. I mean, it just makes that deal look so much better for the Canucks in the end.
Yeah.
So
one thing I don't know if we're going to get to, because it didn't happen, so I'm just going to throw it in here while we're talking about the Canucks. But it's been rumored for the last month and a half that eventually Phil the Thrill Kessel was going to sign with the Canucks. He had done a conditioning stint with them and their AHL team, and it was rumored that it might get done. And by the end of the trade deadline today, they never ended up signing him.
So he's ineligible for the season, which is weird. It sounds like he just wasn't a fit there, and I mean, it just sounds like they didn't really have a spot for him.
Yeah, and it's too bad. You love to see a guy like Phil Kessel playing. Like he's just one of those guys that's fun to watch. He's fun to hear people talk about. So it's too bad, but hopefully he comes back next season for whoever.
Yeah, I got to imagine, if he puts in the work and is actually wanting to come back. It just didn't seem like he was really all that, gung ho about coming back this year. So I wonder if maybe after a year off, maybe come the start of free agency, maybe he's starting to get his name back out there, and maybe he'll get an offer from someone.
Yeah, and I mean, after being the longest Iron Man in NHL history, I was going to say in WWE history there. I got to imagine it's nice to have some time off, right? Like,
yeah, and if it's into Phil Kessel, that's kind of sick to go out like that. Yeah, having your Iron Man streak, it never ended. You went out with it, which
he went out with a cup win.
Yeah, like he's got his cups. He's really, there's not much more left for him to do. So I mean, if he's just kind of at that point where he's like, you know what, I've won 3 cups now. I've scored all my goals, and I'm the longest Iron Man. At that point,
Yeah.
if he decides to walk away, I don't think no one would blame him.
No, he's put in his work.
So just a couple other kind of minor signings we don't need to dive into too much. Jonathan Quick re-upping with the New York Rangers on a 1 year, coming in around $1.25 million per year. I like that for the Rangers. That's cheap. He's been aside from the backups that we've seen, kind of guys like Lindgren and Decord, who were the backups, have kind of just stolen the show as the starters. Quick's really kind of been the best backup in the league. He's been everything that the Rangers could have wanted for him coming in. Just looking at how things kind of went for him the last couple years in LA, and then getting bounced around at the deadline last year. It's nice to see that he's found a place where he can stay, and where I assume he'll probably kind of just play out the rest of his career as long as he's able to maintain the level he's playing at. I think the Rangers will gladly keep him around.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty arguable that he's been better than Igor Shesterkin this year. He's probably been their best goalie this year. So yeah, it's incredibly low risk. It's for 1 year. There's no reason not to do it if both teams are happy with it. So that's a good move for them.
Yeah. Another name that was kind of one of the bigger names on the trade bait list, Tommy Novak, ended up re-signing with the Nashville Predators, signing a 3-year contract extension, total of $10.5 million, coming out to $3.5 million per year. I think this is a great signing for Nashville. I think he really kind of stole the show last year when everybody went down injured, and he finally got the chance to come up and get some playing time, and he really just took the role he was given and ran with it, and has continued to do that this year. And kind of looking at the market and what guys were getting, I think if Nashville moved him, I don't think they would have gotten the return that they would have wanted on a guy like him. So I think keeping, and he's only 26, so keeping him around as part of their, because I mean they're clearly going for it this year, making a run at the playoffs still. So
which is wild. That's insane looking back at the offseason they had. Like they bought out Matt Duchene. Like they made so many moves that were like, fuck it, blow it up, we're done.
Yeah.
And they're going for the playoffs this year. Like that's nuts. So yeah, I'll be honest, I did not recognize the name Tommy Novak at all when I saw this announced. And I could not find anyone who thought this was any less than great for Nashville.
Almost a steal, honestly.
Yeah, like that's what a lot of people are saying. Like it's it by all accounts it looks like a fantastic move for Nashville, and man, Barry Trotz, he is putting together a good group over there. Some people just understand the game. Some people can be a coach, they can be a GM, doesn't matter. They know how to work the game.
Yeah. So a couple of kind of minor defensemen being extended. Zach Bogosian signing a 2-year extension with the Minnesota Wild, $1.25 million per year over those 2 years. That's a great depth signing for Minnesota. He fills that role that they need on the back end. He's a great mentor to their young guys. And then Nick Seeler, we thought was going to be moved by the Flyers, but they really felt like he brought a lot to the table, and they weren't going to get what they would have wanted in a trade for him. So they decided, hey, you know what? Let's keep him around. He's a good dude, works hard. So he signed a 4-year extension with an average annual value of $2.7 million. It's always good to see those guys that kind of struggled in the league for a while, kind of bounced around, being able to find a home and be able to settle down, and to get a 4-year deal is pretty good for a guy like that. And I got to imagine as soon as he was offered that, I feel like that's the first thing he was offered was this deal, and he was more than happy to take it and run with it before the Flyers changed their mind.
Yeah, they that's a nice deal for a guy who's been around for a bit, and yeah, there's not much more to say. Good for him, and I think that's going to be a good move for the Flyers for the next couple of years there.
Yeah. Another young defenseman in the league, Rasmus Sandin. We kind of knew this was going to happen. It was just a matter of when. We now know that he signed a 5-year extension with the Washington Capitals, $23 million total, with an average annual value cap hit of $4.6 million. I think this is a great contract. I love it for both sides, honestly. I think this is a perfect kind of, I don't know if you can call a 5-year deal a bridge deal, really. But I think this is a trade or a signing that is really good for both sides.
Yeah, I think he'll still be young enough and good enough in 5 years that he'll be able to get a good chunk of change on his next contract, as well as him getting paid on this one. But also, I think he definitely could have fetched a bit more than 4.6 per year. Sandin's a pretty good defenseman, especially on the power play. And yeah, I think this is going to be a real good move for them, especially as a guy like John Carlson starts aging out a bit.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And then, I mean, well, we got one more that happened today, but before that one, yesterday was probably the biggest one that happened over the last 2 or 3 days. Gustav Forsling signing an 8-year extension with the Florida Panthers, with a cap hit of 5.75 per year for a total of $46 million over those 8 years. That is this is this is a huge win-win for both sides. Forsling was he was kind of like Sealer. He was on waivers a couple times. He wasn't really able to find his place in the league and where he belonged, and then he wound up with Florida, was given opportunity, and he has become just a pillar for them on the blue line to kind of build around. And 27 years old, an 8-year deal. I don't think he ever even imagined he would get a 2-year deal, but then get $8 million and know you're getting over $40 million guaranteed. I got to imagine he was thrilled by it, and I know the Panthers are happy that they're able to keep him around.
Yeah, this is a great move for both sides. Guys of his skill are just awkwardly in the middle enough that you often don't see them getting the long contracts, the 6+ year contracts.
Yeah.
So to get that much money guaranteed is fantastic for him, and that's a great price for the Panthers. The one thing I don't like about this trade deadline is how good the freaking Panthers did. They made off like bandits with a lot of their moves.
Yeah, they really did.
So yeah, that's a great deal on both sides for them, though.
Yeah, 100%. And then the last of kind of the big signings happened today. We thought he might get traded. Kind of all signs pointed that he was going to get moved, and all of a sudden it was like they're working on an extension, and then 5 minutes later it's like, oh, they've already come to an agreement. Jordan Eberle re-signing with the Seattle Kraken, 2-year contract extension with a cap hit of 4.75 per year, and I think, as you mentioned, it's got a no trade clause with it as well.
Yeah, a full no trade clause. So it's not a full no move, But I mean, I don't see them in the next 2 years sending him down to the minors. So
Yeah, no. This is a perfect you know, this is a perfect contract for both sides because it's Eberle gets to stick around there. I know he really likes it there with Seattle, so he can stick around there for all of next season. Then the following season, if they're good and go on a run, you keep them. If things are still kind of going south there, then you can sit down with them and be like, hey, you know what? Uh, you've done everything you can. You've been a great mentor to these kids. Now let's, if you want, we'll send
do you
you
want
to
to do you
a
want a
cup
chance at a
contender.
cup?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll give you a chance to go win one. So I feel like that's where it's gonna go. When we're looking at the trade deadline in a couple years. But
Yeah.
for the time being, it's a great contract for Seattle for sure. And I don't think they would have gotten a great value back for Eberle if they did move him. So I think they're better off to hold on to him.
Yeah. I don't think he fetches a huge price at this deadline if they did move him. But you know what? Moving him next year, he has 2 years left if you trade him at next deadline. And if you retain 50%, you're sending him out at 2.4 mil. If you retain around 50%, 2.4 for Jordan Eberle for the next 2 years. That's really nice. Like I could definitely see a team paying a first and plus a bit more for that easily.
Mhm.
So I definitely think that this will be good for them, whether they keep him or move him. I think
Yeah.
either way, it'll be a great contract for him.
Yeah. I completely agree there. So with that, now we jump into the trades here. We've got them all pulled up here. We kind of discussed it. We're only going to go through kind of the big major ones, so either ones that have some big name players in it or lots of moving pieces in it, and then we'll come up with a second episode not too long after this one, kind of going through some of the more minor deals, so we can still give love to all the deals that deserve some recognition for them.
Yeah.
So with that, the first one, this happened on March 5th. Uh, the Washington Capitals send Anthony Mantha to the Vegas Golden Knights at 50% retained in exchange for a second-round pick in 2024 and a fourth-round pick in 2026. I mean, for me, this deal is a win for both teams, I think.
Yeah, I think it's a great move. Yeah, it's sorry. I yeah, I think it was a great move for both sides.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Mantha fills a big hole there that Vegas had they were trying to fill. And at the same time, for Washington, I see a lot of people being like, "Oh, Washington, you know, could have gotten more from. They kind of got hosed." And it's like, well, when you think about it, 8 months ago, Anthony Mantha had negative value.
Yeah, I
Like
was gonna
you
say
couldn't
I
you
think
couldn't
getting out
that
from under him
contract is immovable
is almost nice.
even on 1 year. So the fact that he was able to kind of have the bounce back season he did clearly wasn't going to stick around with the Capitals. So I think the fact that they got a second round pick and a fourth for a contract that 8 months ago was dead weight to the team. I think is great for the Capitals, and obviously Vegas gets the new shiny toy theirs they love, and I think Mantha will fit nice on that team.
Yeah, I Vegas loves swinging for the fences with this kind of thing, and that's exactly what this is. And I think Vegas kit is in a position where it's great for them to kind of go for those plays, and Washington's in a good spot to take the safer route. Try and get out from under him in case you think he regresses, and just because we've already seen one team move on from him. We saw the Red Wings move Mantha because they thought he's not quite the guy we thought he was, and
Well, no,
it
it's
kind of
just because they got an offer they couldn't refuse. They got
that's fair, but
they
I
got
do
an
think
offer they just couldn't refuse.
but I do think they were looking to move him regardless at that time, and I think Washington's kind of was in a similar spot, and it
Mhm.
could easily go either way. It could Washington could look like geniuses, he regresses, and it just looks horrible for Vegas, or maybe he turns it around and Washington was wrong to give up on him.
Yeah. Yeah,
He's one of
exactly.
those players that it's hard to tell. Sometimes he has those flashes of brilliance, and then sometimes he's not looking in it. So that's one that you really don't know until you see him playing in a Knights uniform.
Yeah. Well, he played his first game with the Golden Knights last night. His very first shift, he took a double minor for high sticking. So
Oof.
that gives a pretty clear indication to Golden Knights fans about what they can look forward to with Mantha.
Yeah.
Just saying. So that was the only deal that happened on March 5th there. Trades really started to pick up the following day on
Yep.
March 6th. The first trade to occur, the Florida Panthers acquire forward Vladimir Tarasenko at 50% retained from the Ottawa Senators in exchange for a conditional fourth round pick in 2024 and then a third round pick in 2025. Just trying to find the conditions on the
Those
pick
picks.
here.
Yeah, and
Um,
it sounds like
the
Tarasenko was only going to waive his no trade for Florida. It sounds
Yeah.
like it was Florida or he's not going anywhere.
Yeah,
And
that's exactly what it was.
and yeah, it shows in the trade, doesn't it? Like
Mm-hmm.
Tarasenko is not who he used to be. He's not the scoring threat he used to be, but he's still a very serviceable middle six forward at least,
I'm
and
coming in
who
at 2.5
with a
mil
scoring
now.
touch, and yeah, with the retention and all that, yeah, getting him for what was it, a third and a fourth back with conditions? That
Yeah,
is not much for a guy like that.
and I think Tarasenko honestly would probably re-sign with Florida if they offer him a contract. I think he would stick around.
Yeah,
And we do know so it is a 2024 fourth round pick. That's a conditional pick that upgrades to a 2026 third rounder if Florida wins the Stanley Cup this year. So regardless, they're getting a third round pick in 2025, and then either a fourth round pick coming up in this year, or in 2 years they're getting a third if Florida wins the Cup, which could very well happen because that is not the last we're going to be talking about. Our buddies down in Florida there.
no sir, they've been busy.
So that was the first of the deals to come out that day, and they just kept coming. This is one of those bigger ones that have a lot of moving parts in it. So
Yeah, there were a
just
couple almost like confusing trades to try and break down all the parts too and all the conditions.
yeah.
They're getting fancy with it.
So this deal is the Edmonton Oilers acquire forwards Adam Henrique and Sam Carrick. Both of these guys coming in at 50% retained, along with a seventh round pick this year and the rights to goalie Ty Taylor. They are acquiring this from the Anaheim Ducks and the Tampa Bay Lightning, whereas the Anaheim Ducks are receiving a first round pick in 2024, a conditional fifth round pick in 2025. And Tampa is thanked for their troubles in helping retain 25% of Henrique's contract. They will be receiving a conditional fourth round pick in 2025. This was Edmonton's their big move. Their big move of the deadline here.
Yeah, and it's kind of exactly what we expected from them, just a little more depth every year. They keep building up that depth, and it's, over the past 5 years, we've really been waiting for them to make a couple big moves, and they really haven't done that, but they've slowly and more built up. Like every year they get one more guy, and they're finally starting to look like a full unit. And in the past 2 years, so now it's make or break time.
The whole story going up to the deadline last year was during the whole McDavid and Draisaitl era. Edmonton has not once ever traded their first round pick at the deadline to improve the team. And last year they put together that big package that did include their first round pick to Nashville for Matthias Ekholm, who has been nothing but perfect for the
Fantastic there.
Oilers.
Yeah.
And then again this year, so 2 years in a row now, they've said, all right, we're shipping out our first round pick prospects if we have to. We're We're going for it. And I think especially when you're looking around, like obviously this happened before some of the other deals, but when you're looking at teams like, like I know Dallas in Winnipeg are in um, the other division, but like still they're in the same conference. And then you look at Vancouver beefing up, you look at Vegas beefing up. Like you can't stay where you are. You've got to make moves and try and build your team up like all these other teams in the playoff mix around you are doing. So, um, do I
Yeah,
think this is the route Edmonton should have went? No, not really. But I think it does fill some
yeah,
holes that they did have up front.
yeah. I think they could have made some better deals, but at the end of the day, I do think this makes them a better team and more likely to win the cup. So,
Yeah,
it's
it
hard
didn't
to
hurt
say
them.
that it's a loss.
Yeah, it's definitely not a loss by any means.
Yeah, maybe just at most a missed opportunity,
Yeah.
but I
Um.
do think it's good. Whenever you want, I do have one or two stories from over the past week. Just if at any point we want to break it up from some of the trade and extensions.
Okay. Um. Uh. What was I gonna say? I had something.
More on the
Um.
Oilers or another trade?
Oh no, no, oh no. So I went back. For anyone who follows on Twitter, basically all of our sex bots that love us. I was kind of doing some trade grades for some of these deals, but then as the deals kept coming in, I was like, it was so hard to keep track on all of them. And then we had some deals that took um like, 4 or 5 hours before we even got the details. They slowly came in piece by
Yeah,
piece. Um so I'm not I don't know. Do you want me to do that? Do you want me to give grades for teams on each deal while we go through them?
yeah, go for it. I think it's a decent indicator. It's not by the numbers.
Yeah, this isn't the gospel.
Anything,
Like this
but
is me. So
yeah, if you got an inkling, somebody who knows about the league and stuff, it's good to hear, even if it's just a generic, I think it's an A. At least, it means you shouldn't be pissed about the trade at the very least. So
mhm.
I like it.
So I'm not gonna, you know, we'll talk about it, and then I'm just gonna just give the grades as they are, nice and raw.
Yeah,
So with the Tarasenko to Florida deal, I ended up giving Ottawa a C for it. I really felt like they could have gotten more, but at the end of the day, Tarasenko really
he handcuffed him.
put him in a corner and beat him up and said, "We're doing it my way." And then obviously Florida A plus. I mean,
Yeah,
you're giving up uh, whatever it is, whether it's a third and a third or a third and a fourth. You're getting Vladimir Tarasenko. That's well worth it. Um,
absolutely.
the uh, the Anthony Mantha deal, I ended up giving Vegas an A because I think he feels greatly on that team. And then Washington, I ended up giving them an A minus. And then
Very fair.
Tampa, I mean, in this three-way deal, I'd give Tampa an A. I mean, you're getting a fourth round pick to retain some money for the remainder of this season.
Yeah.
I think that's great value.
Sergachev on
Anaheim,
LTIR. Why not? You got the money.
yeah. Anaheim, basically what it is, you're getting a first round pick for Adam Henrique. Sam Carrick's kind of a thrown and wasn't part of it. I think that's this great value for Anaheim to get a first round pick for Henrique, considering, you know, Anthony Mantha was only moved for a second. Tarasenko didn't even get a second. Like,
Not a lot of firsts have
Anaheim
been
got a
moved.
first.
A
No.
surprisingly few amount of firsts being moved. So getting one for him, it's great.
And then Edmonton, I'll give him a B plus, maybe a B in that range, just because again I think there's better pieces that they could have gotten for their first round pick, but nonetheless, Henrique and Carrick fill holes that team did need to address. So I don't hate it for them. It's only because I think that they could have maybe got more value out of that first round pick. Um, the biggest name on the board didn't even get a first back in return, so.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you got some off the grid news, yeah,
Yeah, I've
give it.
just got two things here. I can do one now and then one later if we want.
Yeah,
One's definitely got a little less to it than the other, so we'll do the slightly smaller one first. But I believe it was 6 days ago now. Yes, 6 days ago. Cody Glass got his first career hat trick for the Nashville Predators,
Oh
and
yes.
that was against the Colorado Avalanche, and he had a fantastic post game interview. They asked him about it, and for anyone who doesn't know, Cody Glass is just like an absolute class act. He's one of those guys that just everyone who's ever had any brush with him seems to absolutely adore this guy, and they showed him their appreciation in Nashville. They asked him about the first career hat trick in the post game presser. They kind of did it like the out on the bench, and he was kind of addressing the crowd and the reporter. And they gave him a massive standing ovation. He was getting real emotional, and it was just a fantastic watch. He had a phenomenal game, and it was really sweet to see him kind of get his flowers there and see the Nashville crowd showing their appreciation for him, because
Yeah.
he's a guy that's impossible not to root for, and
Yeah, no,
it
any
was just
video
so
I've
good to
seen of
see.
him, yeah, any video I've seen of him, he just seems like a great dude. People love him, and it's something we talk about a lot. But Vegas really, you know, doesn't always do right by their players, and I think Cody Glass is one of those guys who really kind of got the shaft the worst from him. He was the very first draft pick of the Golden Knights, and they're making all these big deals, and it's always Cody Glass is untouchable. He's, the future of our team. He was our first pick, and they were so high on him. And then, he was never really getting the chance to play for him and actually be what they were claiming him to be. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, just boom, he was included in a deal, and they shipped him off to Nashville because um, Vegas wanted to take a chance on the bigger name in Nolan Patrick and hoping that he could bounce back. And so, they kind of just shipped him out, and there was really no talk about it. And so it's nice to see that he was able to finally find his footing there with Nashville, and he's able to be a part of that team. And I know that he's one of the more. I mean, obviously, pretty much all the guys are liked in that room, but he's definitely
Yeah,
up there. Like, a lot of the guys are quite a big fan of him.
yeah, and if you enjoy those wholesome, those feel good moments, I definitely recommend going and seeking out that post game press conference, because the crowd is just so good and cheering him on so much. It's a great watch.
Yeah. All right. So continuing on March 6th, again, the deals just keep rolling in this day. We've got two deals here that both involve the Avalanche. The second was obviously a very direct result of the first one. But the first deal is the Colorado Avalanche are acquiring defenseman Sean Walker and a 5th-round pick in 2026 in exchange for sending forward Ryan Johansson to the Philadelphia Flyers, along with their 1st-round pick in 2025. So not this year, the following year, which is a draft that a lot of teams are really looking forward to, because that is this year's draft is quite deep. Last year's was, but 2025 is one of those really big drafts, which is why I think a good portion of the 1st-round picks we've seen get moved at the deadline here are 2025.
Yeah, it's almost thrown me off a couple times, because I'm almost thinking like as if we're in the wrong year, just because there's so many 2025 picks being moved.
Yeah.
I think this was one of the first of many trade wins for Colorado. I think they did great here. It sounds like Johansson had in the past few weeks was really rubbing some people the wrong way in the Avs locker room.
Yeah, it sounded like he was causing some issues.
Yeah, especially it kind of sounds like it was a lot of their key guys. So I imagine McKinnon probably not too afraid to speak his mind. Maybe McCarr, some of those guys just didn't like whatever he was saying.
Maybe he wasn't eating his veggies.
Working.
Maybe that pissed McKinnon off. He wasn't eating his greens, and McKinnon said, "No, enough's enough."
Yeah. Sorry, I had a glizzy earlier. I can't eat my lentils.
Yeah, maybe that's
so.
Could you imagine McKinnon and Kessel on the same team? Oh, that would feed families to just have a documentary on that. This is one of those deals I gave both teams an A+.
Yeah.
Colorado, they got, Sean Walker, who's going to be great on their blue line. And, in doing so, they were able to move on from Ryan Johansson, which obviously the next trade we talk about will involve Ryan Johansson a bit more. And then a 5th round pick next year. I mean, the price for Sean Walker was already still at a first. And the fact that you only had to pay that and you got to dump a contract, I think is great for them. And then the Flyers, I mean, they got a first.
They got the first.
That's what they were asking for. Chris Tanev went for a second in the prospect. So I was like, well, all right, well, there's no way Sean Walker goes for a first now. And they're in a playoff spot. Are they going to make the playoffs? No, I think they end up falling out now. But they got the first in 2025 that they won, and all they have to do is and I think Ryan Johansson, I think they sent him straight to the minors.
Yeah,
they tried to trade him today and no one wanted him. So you deal with this $4 million for the remainder of this year and next year. And at the end of it, his contract's up and then boom, now you've got a 1st round pick there. So it's a win-win for both teams, I think.
Yeah, it was actually funny because I'm pretty sure that the Flyers announced that they were sending Johansson down to the minors through waivers. I'm pretty sure they announced that before the trade had officially been announced.
Yeah.
So actually, they knew exactly
found out about it. That's how I found out about it. I saw a tweet that said Ryan Johansson and then in brackets PHI on waivers. And I was like, okay, can I get the trade first? Can I know why he's all of a sudden on Philly? So that's how I found out that there was a deal first, is to see he was on waivers. Obviously didn't get claimed. And then I think he just stayed in Colorado, actually. I think Danny Briere got a hold of him and said, hey, you know what? Basically straight up, we don't want you. So just hang out in Colorado right now. We're going to try to get a deal and ship you off somewhere else. And then obviously that didn't happen. So now what happens with Johansson? I really don't know. Like,
I guess he reports to
the Flyers give him a chance, or
I guess he reports to the Phillies minor team, I suppose.
Yeah.
And then they go from there.
Yeah. Because you know what? I guess if he wasn't meshing well in the Avs locker room, which that seems like a pretty lighthearted and chill group they have there. If he wasn't fitting well there, I don't think Tortorella wants anything to do with him.
I kind of see the Avs and Flyers. I imagine they have pretty different locker rooms. Not necessarily one good or one bad. Just they seem like they have a lot of different guys, a lot different outlook, especially because Philly has Tortorella. So depending on how Johansson acts, because I really don't know at all what his kind of philosophy is. If he's a guy who works hard, he'll find his way into that lineup, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think when you've got a guy that's making $4 million, and is either the first line center he used to be or the second line center? No, he's a 3rd, 4th line guy now. But you know what? If he's willing to put in the work for the Flyers, I think the Flyers will call him up at some point. I don't think they'll just stick him in the minors and say, stay in the corner, don't move.
Yeah, if there's anyone who can get something out of him, it's Tortorella. He is fantastic at revitalizing careers and getting the best out of guys who seemingly can't put it together elsewhere.
Yeah. But yeah, this is our first deal, the deadline, where both teams are walking away with an A+. So and then
golf class for them.
This bleeds right into the next deal, because when this happened, it was like, all right, we know Colorado was kind of sniffing around trying to get a second line center, and now Johansson, who was supposed to be it, is now gone. His money's gone. What are they going to do? And then not even 30 minutes later, groundbreaking news. And I want to say, because I got kind of clowned for this when I included him in one of the mock trades I came up with last episode, because people were like, there's no way he's getting moved. And I was like, wait and see. And sure enough, the Colorado Avalanche trade defenseman Bowen Byram to the Buffalo Sabres in exchange for centerman Casey Middlestat. Straight up 1-for-1. This is basically the modern day Ryan Johansson for Seth Jones trade.
Yeah, I'm very interested to know what you think about this, because I do have a pretty solid opinion on this one.
So, I actually, what did I? I've got in my mind what the grades are, but I think I actually did throw this one up on uh, on Twitter. So I just want to check. So I ended up giving Colorado. I gave them an A, and I gave the Sabres an A minus.
Okay, that's pretty close to what I would say for it. I like the trade for both sides for sure. I think this is going to work out better for Buffalo though. I think, of course,
See, I don't know.
of course, barring injuries, it's hard to plan for that. But if he can be healthy, I think Bowen Byram's going to be fantastic over there in Buffalo.
See, I'm trying to think of what Buffalo's doing. And that's the reason Buffalo didn't, because I almost gave both teams an A plus. Honestly, I would give Colorado an A plus probably. I mean, like I said in the last episode, there wasn't room for Byram, just with the stacked defense they have. Like there really wasn't room for him to take that next step and reach his full potential. And they were able to get a breakout star in Casey Middlestad over the last couple of years, who can easily fit in and be that second line center, and he fits right in with their core with McKinnon, Rantanen, Lance. Like he fits right in with the time frame of their core. So, but here's the thing I don't get: Bowen Byram is a left-handed defenseman.
Yeah.
Buffalo already has Rasmus Dahlin, and he's locked in. First overall pick, other first overall pick, Owen Power. They're not moving him. And then they've also got Matthias Samuelsson, who they recently had just signed to an 8-year extension. And then they've also got former first-round pick Ryan Johnson coming up, who's a left-handed defenseman. So they've got 5, NHL defensemen, pretty much all of them high-caliber players. I mean, Matthias Samuelsson's more of a defensive guy. He's probably just always going to kind of be that third pairing guy and logs a lot of minutes on the penalty kill, maybe. But it's just, I'm trying to figure out where Bowen Byram kind of fits in with all these great left-handed defensemen that Buffalo has.
Yeah, and I definitely think they're going to move at least one, if not two, of those guys that you mentioned out. Obviously not Power or Dahlin.
That's kind of why I think I put out on Twitter. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe at the draft Bowen Byram gets flipped.
I could definitely see it, but
because I don't think Matthias Samuelsson's going. Like not with that extension now. They're like he's not getting moved. So I mean, again, I don't know these players very well.
Are they all left side?
Yeah. But that's the thing. I don't know much. Like I don't watch a whole lot of Buffalo games. I don't know a lot about Bowen Byram. I don't know if maybe one of them is more comfortable playing on the right hand side.
And that's exactly what I'm thinking, Bowen Byram. I think he goes on that top. I think that he goes right on that top pairing with Dahlin. He's already come up through the system in Colorado, learning the Avalanche system, and there was actually a clip floating around that was great. It showed Buffalo on the power play the other day with Byram in his first game there, and he knows how to run a power play better than anybody on the Buffalo team that's currently there. He there's a reason why Buffalo's power play has been so bad. He is rotating around. None of the other guys knew what they were doing. I think he's a lot more comfortable than anyone else there, moving around, going side to side, kind of cycling around, and I think he's more than comfortable being on the right-hand side as a lefty, and kind of floating around, making room for himself, and because generally you do want the right-handed guys on the right and the left-handed guys on the left, but when you're getting up to these elite caliber guys, I think a lot of them with their skill can make up for it, and I think he's one of those guys.
Here's the thing: having a lefty on the left side and a righty on the right side is crucial when you're in the defensive zone and you're trying to break the puck out. But if you're in the offensive zone, like if you've got Dahlin and Bowen Byram together and they're out there at the top line, they're always in the offensive zone. It doesn't it doesn't matter whether you've got a righty on the left or righty on the right or whatever. But if you're always in the offensive zone, that doesn't matter whatsoever. So if it's able to work like that, I think it could be nice. It is also worth noting that Bowen Byram stated he is very excited to go to Buffalo because forwards Dylan Cousin and Peyton Krebs did play with Bowen Byram for Team Canada in the World Juniors that year. I'm pretty sure. I might be wrong, but I'm like 99.9% sure that they were all together. So now they
definitely are ex-teammates, and I did hear that I believe just past a couple weeks ago in February when they had their time off, they were all those guys you mentioned were hanging out, and word of that got back to the GM in Buffalo, and so they were the ones who reached out to Colorado about like, hey, are you guys looking to move Byram? Like that, they were hanging out, they were buddies, and that kind of got the ball rolling to end up making this trade. They were like, we'd like this guy, and they talked to Byram, and he's like, yeah, I'd like to go to Buffalo. So, and I mean, if you're in Buffalo, you hear that, you gotta try and get the guy, because not a ton of guys want to go to Buffalo, but if Bowen Byram and Alex Tuch want to be there, pick them up while you can.
Yeah, and I know some Buffalo fans are obviously upset about Casey Middlestat being moved, but at the end of the day, you do also got to look. I mean, they do have Tage Thompson. They've got Dylan Cousins, who, in my opinion, I think he does better as a centerman as opposed to a winger. They do have Gergensons, who's kind of a fan favorite. I don't think he's going anywhere. And then they've also got Peyton Krebs, who, I like him as a player. I like what he brings. I don't think he's going to reach that level that he was projected when he was drafted as early as he was. I think he's going to kind of be that, third line center for them going forward. Yeah. So Casey Middlestat was expendable, and if you can get Bowen Byram back, I think that's
good value.
I think that's
And they've also got quite a few young guys. They got Jack Quinn coming up. They got Zach Benson. Like they have no shortage of talented young forwards. So I wouldn't be too broken up about it if I was a Sabres fan, because I do think Byram is going to be really good. He's scored on 100% of their goals since the trade.
Oh, well, there you go. Yeah, he did pot one last night.
He's got 2 points in their last game, and they scored 2 goals. So,
but yeah, I mean, again, it's not one. I don't think it's one of those initial, looking at it. I don't think it's an A+ for both sides. Both teams still in an A. But you know what? Easily within
a 2 lot months, of potential.
Within 2 months, it could easily be like, all right, yeah, it's an A+ for both sides.
And
2 more deals.
That's one of those deals that we might be dissecting in 15 years, because they both have such high projected ceilings and they're both so young. Yeah, it's hard to know right now.
Yeah. The next deal that took place, we're still on March 6th here. The New York Rangers acquire Alexander Wenberg from the Seattle Kraken in exchange for a 2024 second-round pick, a conditional 4th-round pick in 2025, and Seattle did retain 50% of Wenberg's contract on the final year of that deal.
Yeah, it's weird that we're starting off with so many of these ones, but I like this for both sides. Yeah, it's I think if they had the right partner and maybe gave up their own draft pick, they could have swung a first for Wenberg, but I think it would have had to have been Wenberg retained with a 3rd or maybe a 4th. But
yeah,
you know what? A 2nd and a 4th, I think that's just fine for them.
Yeah. And I mean, it's a guy that obviously wasn't going to stick around there. Like, he's not part of their long-term plans. So, if you can get get those back. It's a conditional 4th-round pick. I believe it's the better of the two 4th-round picks that the Rangers have that year, because I'm pretty sure they have two. So I'm pretty sure they just get the better one of them. So really, it's a 2nd and a 4th.
Yeah.
I mean, Rangers, I would give this a probably a B plus, because it fills
I
that
would
third
agree.
line center role that they're trying to fill. Again, I think they could have gotten more. There was rumors that Anaheim had offered Adam Henrique and Frank Vatrano to the Rangers in exchange for
Ooh.
Capo Caco and a first, which I think the Rangers
Oh.
were totally within their right to decline that.
I was going to say,
I
I
would have liked them
love
to
that
go.
for the Ducks.
Yeah, I would have liked the Rangers to maybe go back to the well there and be like, hey, you know what? And Frank Vatrano, we know, actually wanted to stay with Anaheim. Him and his family really like it there, and he talked to management and said, hey, you know what? I'm good staying here and riding the process out. We like it here. So I would have maybe liked the Rangers to go back and try and get Adam Henrique instead. But I think Wenberg still fills that third line role very well. Seattle, I'll probably just give them a B. I mean, they got value back for a guy that was gone either way, and if
Yeah.
I'm sure they would have maybe liked to get a first or like 2 seconds or a second and a third, but really this was the market value for a guy like it, and
Yeah, this is
they only had to retain. They
about
didn't
the
have to add.
same. This is the same trade value going to both sides. I think it's a fair
Yeah.
deal. Nothing too much to report on.
Yeah. And then the big one of the day now was all kind of leading up, and then the news got dropped. And then it took, I think, 4 to 5 hours before we got the whole breakdown of it. But so the Vegas Golden Knights, again, we're going back to the Golden Knights, and we're not even fucking done with them.
Not even close.
The Vegas Golden Knights acquired defenseman Noah Hannafin from the Calgary Flames. Noah Hannafin coming in at 75% retained. The Philadelphia Flyers helped broker the deal and retained 25% of Hannafin's contract, and they were given a 5th-round pick in this upcoming draft for their troubles in that. And then the Flames receive a conditional 1st-round pick in 2025, a conditional 3rd-round pick in 2025. They retained 50% of Noah Hannafin's contract, and they got defenseman Daniil Miromanov, who immediately, like an hour after the trade, ended up signing a 2-year extension with the Flames. And I said that night, I was like, you know what? If you told me earlier in the day that there would be a defenseman signing an extension with the Flames, I would not believe you. Obviously, assuming that would have been talking about Noah Hannafin.
Yeah.
But he is off to Vegas now. So the 3rd-round pick. The 3rd-round pick was. So the 3rd-round pick will become a 2nd-round pick if the Golden Knights advance to the 2nd round of the playoffs. And the way it's kind of shaping up, basically the condition is if you beat Edmonton, now we get a 2nd as well instead of a 3rd. Yeah. And then the 1st-round pick is a conditional 1st, being that the Flames get Vegas's 2025 1st-round pick unless Vegas trades their 2025 1st-round pick. If they do, then Calgary would get pushed back and they would receive a 2026 1st-round pick that is completely unprotected. There's no conditions. It's strictly Calgary's. And which we'll get to later, but spoiler alert, they get it. They end up getting it. So
they do have that unprotected 2026 pick.
Yeah. I mean, this was one of the bigger ones, and we kind of knew it was going to happen. Like we just didn't know where. It was kind of all signs were leading to Tampa. It sounded like there wasn't a deal in place, but there was already a contract extension in place. Should Noah Hannafin go there? It kind of sounded like it was down to like Florida, Tampa, Boston, and Detroit were kind of kicking around. It was pretty much all but confirmed that Hannafin was going to go to an American team in the Eastern Conference. He wanted to go back out east because he's kind of from the Boston area. And last minute bid by the Golden Knights. I think it was in the span of 15 minutes or so. Was like I saw
It
a
was
notification that was like Vegas
out
is
of nowhere.
kind of entering the mix for Noah Hannafin, and all of a sudden it was like, boom, Hannafin's going to Vegas, and then it took 5 hours to get the return
And
on it.
it's crazy because, like you said, we're still talking about stuff that happened on the 6th. Today being for us being the trade deadline, the 8th. This feels like an unforced error from Calgary. I think they could have gotten more for Hannafin, and I definitely think they get more if they have the extension in place. And I don't know why they were pushing to get as much as they could with every other team, and then Vegas calls and says, "Hey, here's our offer," and they take it, and it's done just like that. Like I'm not sure why they were so quick to get it done with them, because I definitely think they could have gotten more for Hannafin, especially if they get that extension going.
I completely agree. I think whether they went down one of the roads with the other teams involved or they waited until the day of the deadline, I think that they could have driven up the price for Hannafin. I think I don't know for sure, but I'm pretty confident the reason they went with this is it sounds like they're really, really high on Daniil Miromanov, 26-year-old defenseman, came over from Russia. Really, he's been dominating at the AHL level, and he's just never really been given the opportunity to play for the Golden Knights because, again, Vegas already has a stacked defense, and every year they go out and grab someone. So there was never room for him to get that opportunity. And it sounds like Calgary is really high on him. Like we already saw, they locked him into an extension immediately. Yeah. And then Craig Conroy just had nothing but good things to say about him. Just talking about the way he plays in his game, and then even hearing from Miromanov and how excited he's to come to Calgary and put in the work. And he didn't say it, but basically said, "I'm gonna prove Vegas wrong," which I kind of fucking love
to hear. You love to hear any guy being traded away from a team saying, "I'm gonna show them what they're missing." Like, because this wasn't a move because we have to make room for the cap. This was, we think we can get better instead of you, and you'd love to see him go out and prove him wrong next year.
Yeah. So, at first glance, I didn't love it for Calgary. The more I kind of look at it, I'm like, you know what? It's not terrible. I don't love for them.
It's not horrible, but I think they could have got more.
Yeah, and I don't love that, they're kind of obviously they got the most back for Elias Lindholm. I still think the Canucks kind of actually overpaid for Lindholm. So it kind of does soften the blow of this. But at the end of the day, Hannafin was your big piece, your big piece for the deadline that everybody knew you were moving, and you had to capitalize. And I do like that, they've now for sure they do have a first. It's, after the deadline Vegas had, it's probably going to be a second round pick next year, because I'm assuming they're probably going to win in the first round over Edmonton. And then, you know what, if Miromanov turns into what Craig Conroy is preaching that he is and what he's going to be, I think this could be okay for Calgary. But again, it's one of those deals where we won't know until 2029, 2030 maybe, because we won't really know what this 2026 first round pick is going to become. So I mean, initial glance, Philly, I'll give him an A+. I mean, you get a free fifth for, again, retaining 25% for the rest of the season. You don't even need that cap space anyways. So
it'll be gone before free agency. Why not?
Vegas, I would give them, I'm sure they probably would have liked to already have Noah Hannafin locked in to an extension. But
do you think they extend him? Are they going to be able to?
Well, we'll get into that. because they've still got more moves that they made that could
Yeah.
stop them from that. Vegas, I honestly, I'd probably give them an A plus. I mean, realistically, like,
Yeah.
I mean, if they win the cup this year, regardless whether or not Hannafin stays, it's an A plus.
Absolutely.
But I mean,
If you
still,
win
what
a
they
cup,
gave up, I
every
mean,
move you've made over the year is an A plus. Like,
yeah. Yeah. So Vegas, I would give him an A plus. I really like the addition of Hannafin to their team and what he brings. Also worth noting, I think he was actually okay going to Vegas, because him and Jack Eichel are like they are best friends. They kind of grew up together in Boston, played hockey together. Like they're as close as you can get. Hannafin, I think, went. Where did Hannafin go? Did he go fifth that year?
I think it was a little lower.
Eichel
I think it
went.
was
Eichel
six,
went
7,
second.
8.
I think Hannafin might have actually been five that year.
It was up there. One thing
But anyways, him and Jack Eichel are best friends, so they're
yeah.
Hannafin. Okay, so he was fifth overall in
Oh, he was fifth. Wow.
2015, and Jack Eichel was obviously second that year.
I wonder if they just accepted they were going to get a little less for this trade and made the deal, just because Conroy, the history with Calgary, just not getting the deal done at the deadline, and then Goudreau walks, all these guys in the past who have just kind of walked for nothing. You can't let it happen again. So I wonder how much it played into, like, was Tampa really antsy and like, we need to make this deal happen now, or we're out. We're gonna go pursue some other the stuff. So maybe there was a bit of a time crunch, and they were feeling the pressure of, we can't just lose them for nothing. So they might have felt the pressure that way and just made the deal. And if that's the case, you know what? They didn't lose him for nothing. So it's a hell of a lot better than that.
Yeah. And to me, you always got to wonder, like, again, we don't know what Calgary was, valuing. Did they value, getting a blue chip prospect more, or did they value the first round pick? And I think it kind of looks like they valued the first round pick a bit more. And not only that, it's, a first round pick in 2026. So they have lots of time that, if they're with what they have, they kind of can't really tear it down and do a rebuild. They kind of got to do a retool on the fly. And so if that first round pick of 2026 is used as a trade chip, if it turns into something like, obviously it's not going to be him, but if it's used in part of a deal to get a guy like a Bowen Byram or something, I think that's something that they would do. And then that might look great for them if they end up flipping that first to get a young prospect that, maybe even like a Trevor Zegras or something. Obviously, I don't think it's going to be Zegras, but something like that. If they use a first round pick to bring in a young stud that can be a cornerstone for that franchise for 10 plus years, all of a sudden it could be like, oh shit, maybe Calgary did win this deal. Like you just can't, you can never quite know when it's such a late first round pick. Like, we have to go through 2 full drafts before we get to the draft that this pick is involved.
And then it's probably 2 or 3 years before they play in the league. So
exactly, because assuming it's probably going to be a later first. Like, it's not going to be a, unless
they're in a wild card spot now, and if they price themselves out with the cap, you never know.
Yeah.
One thing I will say, if they don't trade it, and we just love fantasy booking it, right? But 16 points in his last 10 points in his last 5 games, up for the 2026 draft, Joe Iginla. Yeah. You never know. They love bringing guys back in the NHL when their kids enter the league. So I could definitely see it. Who knows where he's going to go in the draft? Maybe it lines up with where Vegas's end up.
Yeah, 100%. So that's the last of the deals from from March 6th there. Again, I'd probably give Vegas an A plus just based on the initial deal. Calgary, I would probably still give them an A minus because I mean getting a first round pick is always good, and they sold me on Miromanov. I just don't know a lot about him, but Conroy sold me on him, and then Miromanov sold himself to me based on his interview. So like I can't give the Flames lower than an A minus, and then it could easily turn into an A plus. Like we just don't know.
And not to mention Hannafin's agent did not make it easy on him. They were shutting down trade talks so much because he had a 10-team no trade list, but for the teams that he could go to, so many of them were out on him the second he said he wouldn't resign. And so he was just going, I'm not going to resign anywhere except for Tampa, Florida, or Vegas or something like that, right? So even though he only had 10-team no trade, it was realistically a 5-team trade list, it sounded like.
And that's what pissed me off, because after the deal happened, I was listening to the radio and it was these two Flames guys talking, and one of the guys was like, he's like, man, I know Hannafin kind of, held all the cards, but you got to feel for the guy when you're going through this process and it's weighing on you because you don't know where you're gonna. I'm like, bullshit. He knew where he was gonna end up. He was single-handedly, he was driving the bus for this deal. Wherever Noah Hannafin got traded, he controlled that. So it's not like
Conroy by the balls.
Yeah, it's not like, oh, poor guy. It's just constantly weighing of where am I going to get traded and where do I have to move to? It's like, no, he controlled this. Like, there's no surprise that it was the only teams that were interested were exactly where he wanted to go. The biggest team pushing for him being the one that he openly said he wants to go and sign there.
I don't think Tampa was looking to get Hannafin until he made it look like Tampa would be getting him for a discount. Like, he put the screws to the Flames pretty good. So and then the fact that they got what they did for him, it's not too bad.
And then obviously Vegas came in at the 11th hour, and probably as soon as Hannafin heard Vegas, he was like, oh shit, my best friend is there. 100% I'll go there.
He probably didn't name them as a team he wanted to go to because he figured they couldn't make the cap work.
Yeah. Well, little do they know, Vegas always finds a way.
They always find a way.
So I'm going to take about a minute break here quickly. If you want to run through that second story,
sure,
that you had quickly here, and I'll be back in like maybe not even a minute. I'll probably get the tail end of the story anyways.
Sure. So for those who didn't hear, a hockey player known as Ivan Miroshnichenko played a game in Pittsburgh the other day. He is a member of the Washington Capitals. Miroshnichenko has been battling for the past 2 years Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is a type of cancer, the same type of cancer that Mario Lemieux actually had in 92-93. And he was playing. He came back after a very long break because of that. And so he played in Pittsburgh the other day, and he actually scored his first NHL goal, and it was incredibly wholesome to see. He was actually talking about it later, how Mario Lemieux, once he got diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma, he got a call from Mario Lemieux, who told him, life doesn't end at diagnosis. You're going to recover. He basically kind of imparted some wisdom on this guy who is in a completely different system, completely different franchise, and a very human moment there of him reaching out. And he came back after his battle with cancer, and he scored a goal, and it was a fantastic moment there in Pittsburgh. The crowd, obviously not happy that they got scored on, but the crowd was very happy, gave him some of the less upset fans gave him a bit of a standing ovation. Very emotional on the bench. It was just a great moment to see, this guy's comeback. He worked so hard to go through his treatments and beat cancer. And he got his first NHL goal the other day. So congratulations to Ivan Miroshnichenko.
I was wondering if that's what the story was going to be, because I started to think about that when I was like, yeah, that's probably it, because that was a pretty cool moment. One thing I thought of, just we were discussing with the Canucks and the Lindholm or the Pettersson extension and all these Flames deals. Like, you just can't help but wonder, did Elias Lindholm really just screw himself out of so much money when it comes to signing an extension after this season, or going to free agency and
I wonder.
Because I mean, again, I don't we don't know if this is for sure, but like, obviously he's kind of been, he struggled with the Flames this year. Really kind of hasn't been anywhere near the same player since Tkachuk and Gaudreau left, which I think that would happen to any player when you lose your two wingers and those guys. But it was reported that like this year at the beginning of the season, the Flames offered Lindholm like an 8-year extension at $9 million per year, and it obviously didn't get signed. And now I'm like, after his struggles with Calgary, he's kind of struggled a bit with Vancouver, to the point where it almost sounded like he might actually be flipped and traded out of Vancouver at the deadline. Obviously, it didn't happen, but you got to wonder, like, is he going to be in a situation kind of like a John Klingberg, where it's like you could have secured the bag and you didn't take it at that time, and now you probably won't ever get that chance to get that kind of money again.
I do think he definitely has time to get back to that level and secure that. I do think he'll have to take a little bit less money in this upcoming off season, or perhaps an extension. I do wonder, is he going to take a slightly less money than he could have gotten and go for term, or is he going to?
Yeah.
Is he fully going to go the John Klingberg route, and is he going to try and take a 1-year deal, a little less, prove himself, and then go for that big contract?
Yeah.
And I have no idea which way he's going to go. If I had to guess, I bet he's probably going to try and get as much as he can on an 8-year deal, an 8 or 7-year deal. But I do think the price has gone down a bit, and I do think he can get back up to that level. So if a team can get him for a little bit cheaper, I think there's a good chance that a team's going to get a steal for a very solid second line center.
Yeah. It's a very good assessment there. Also, I mean, round of applause to Calgary and Craig Conroy. I mean, this whole year is all around, from the time Craig Conroy became the general manager up until now, it was like he just got thrown to the wolves, and it was like, you're coming in, it's like you've got all these big name players whose contracts are up, you got to figure it out. And he got Backlund signed, the rest have been traded. You know what, I think in terms of all things considered, between the different deals, I think Craig Conroy did just fine in terms of kind of retooling the team and building towards the future. And like you said, now it's a new era of Flames hockey. All of that UFA, that trade nonsense is done. I think kind of the last Band-Aid that should have been ripped off at the deadline that wasn't, and I think it'll happen in the offseason, is Jacob Markstrom getting traded. I think now is the time that they should have just pulled the trigger, just rip the band off, get it done all at once, and move on. But it's a new era for the Flames now. None of that stuff is looming. Now they can really just focus on using this insane amount of pieces that they've gotten back from all of these deals, and they can start working towards trying to do this quick retool that's kind of the path that they're on. And I think it's kind of the path that they have to take when you've got Anderson locked up, you've got Weegar locked up, Kadri, Huberdeau. Like, you kind of just have to try and make it work. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, well, at least you can say you tried. But so I mean, it's probably a big relief for Flames fans, which I know we've obviously got quite a few Flames fans that tune in to listen. So now it's looking towards the future and the next wave of the Calgary Flames.
Yeah, it really is an entirely different team from this trade deadline forward that they've known for the past 5-10 years, and they've definitely got a lot to wish went different. But I do think there's a lot to be excited about. They're not a bottom team yet by any stretch, and I think they've got enough pieces that they could very well improve over the next couple of years. Not to mention Jonathan Huberdeau, who people were saying was the worst contract in the league for a good bit there. I believe they were saying the other night he's got like 25 points in his last 26 games, something like that. He's scoring again since the new year.
I think he was a point per game guy throughout the month of January, which considering you went all, I mean, it is all like it's huge considering he went almost all of December without a point. He got an assist and then scored on his own net on December 31st in that game against the Flyers. But like it's been a nice turnaround, and I think the rise of Sharon Govich there has been huge for him. I think Kuzmenko coming in has really helped. He's just starting to look more comfortable, and he's not the hero that, like, because he's not the guy that, and it sucks when you're paying a guy what $10.5 million to not be a play driver, but he's not. Huberdeau doesn't go out there and drive the play. He doesn't do what McDavid does, or Pedersen, or Crosby, or Kucherov.
No,
he is a complementary
elite piece. Yeah, he's a very elite.
He's probably the best He's probably the best complementary piece in the league, actually. And when they put him in a position where it's, you know what, you just go out there, kind of hang it on the perimeter, and you pull off like that pass he made the other night. It might even been against Tampa. I can't remember.
It was against Tampa. He spun around and a backhand pass cross crease.
Dude, that's like, prime Joe Thornton.
Yeah, goalie had no chance.
Joe Thornton stuff. Yeah.
Like, so, I don't even think he one-timed into the net. I think he grabbed it, stopped it, corralled it, and took the shot on the still empty net. It was a fantastic play, and he was all over the ice that entire game. And I'm very glad to see
him do his
thing. Doing well.
Yeah, because I mean, in Florida, he was with Barkov, and Barkov drove the play. Huberdeau was just a complementary piece that could make magic happen from the outside. And when the Flames just let him do that, he is such an effective player for them. But they can't put him with a Dryden Hunt and a Pospisil and expect him to drive the play. He needs someone to drive the play and just get the puck to him on the outside and let him work his magic. And it works when they do it that way. They just don't like to do it that way, apparently.
Yeah, and I do understand when you're paying a guy that much, there's some expectations that he'll drive the play.
100%.
But that's not the guy you picked up. You picked up the guy that somebody else goes in, bangs and crashes, you get the puck to him, and then from there he can quarterback the play. It's not to say that he can't be the most important guy on a line, but somebody else has to get possession a lot of the time and make those plays to get it to him, and from there he will help you score.
Well, I mean, I don't, I try to watch as many Flames games as possible, just because, you always kind of want to keep tabs on the hometown team and whatnot. But if there's any Flames fans listening, let me know. I don't know if they've ever tried this line, but a line of, I mean, I know he's suspended right now, but if you go with a Huberdeau, a Sharon Govich, and a Pospisil, I mean, Pospisil go in there, crash and bash, get the puck to Huberdeau, and then find Sharon Govich for a one-timer or a cross crease or something. That could be very effective.
Is Sharon Govich a right winger?
He's kind of a right winger center that he kind of goes back and forth based on who's in and out of the lineup. I think he's kind of more slotted in as a centerman once Lindholm got traded.
I'd like to see Sharangovich, Huberdeau, and Coleman on a line. Obviously, that's
Even
very
that,
easy for me to say as a Tampa fan, but
no,
Coleman's
that
a
could be
very
huge.
good. He's got real good possession numbers, especially
Yeah.
this year, and he's also, I believe, their leading goal scorer. So you put him together with Huberdeau, you got to imagine they're going to be able to put some decent numbers up.
Yeah. Alrighty, Rue. So we're not at the point where we've just got the trades that took place on March 7th, the day before the deadline, and then March 8th, the day of the deadline. We are strictly going to be focusing on big trades now. I mean, we've been doing that the whole time, but March 6th was all big trades. That was just a huge day. But so we're just gonna, so there's gonna be some minor deals that we're not gonna talk about right now, and those will be covered in the next one.
Yeah, that'll
So,
probably be released on either Sunday or Monday, if I had to guess.
so starting off the very first deal, this isn't a huge one, but in terms of how it's being blown up, it's pretty fucking huge. So bear with me here.
All right.
So the first deal that took place on March 7th was the Toronto Maple Leafs acquired Joel Edmondson at 50% retained from the Washington Capitals in exchange for a third round pick this year and a fifth round pick next year. I mean, Toronto, I'd give them a or a B minus. Washington,
Yeah, it's fine.
I'd probably give them a B. I think it's fair value for Edmondson, but again with Toronto, I'm like every year. I mean, I know last year they went out and grabbed all these big pieces, but like you can't tell me Joel Edmondson was the guy you wanted to go and get.
Yeah, I
Like
mean,
no,
they
it
finally
can't be.
broke out of the first round last year. If they're looking to go for it this year, that Joel Edmondson's the guy.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
exactly.
is it for a third and a fifth? It's not a bad deal, but you
Yeah,
you
no, by
you'd
no
like to
means
see him
is it a
make
bad
more.
deal.
They
Yeah,
gotta do more than that, and
yeah.
I don't think they really did too much other than that, right? So
They did was they really brought in Labushkin and Edmondson, and
yeah,
that was it. So, I would have liked to see him maybe, you know, open up their treasure chest a bit more. And there was talks that Nick Robertson was maybe getting moved. I would have liked to see him maybe throw a package together. And I know Hannafin was out of the question because they didn't want to give up a haul for Hannafin when Hannafin clearly wasn't going to stay. So I don't blame him there. But I don't know. I feel like there's just other guys that you could have went out and got that would have mattered more because really Joel Edmondson, Labushkin are kind of the same type of player. Like it's not like you're getting an A and B. You're getting two A players. So
yeah,
it's just a weird one. Like I don't hate it for them. It doesn't make sense for them. So that's kind of why I don't give them a. I mean,
yeah.
a second and a fifth is nothing to give up for a guy like Edmondson, but it's just Edmondson just doesn't fit. Or I'd even be higher on it if they didn't have Labushkin, but just both of those guys, it just doesn't make sense to get both.
Yeah, and I think, and maybe that's just the reality of Toronto's situation with the guys they're paying. Obviously everyone talks so much about the big four, the big five, if you want to include Morgan Riley. They're just making so much money that maybe
Mhm.
this is just all they get at deadlines. They don't get to go out and get those big name guys because we've got big name guys at home.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. 100%. Um. What are we considering big? Because I kind of think this is
I
a big
completely
one.
defer to your judgment whether it's a big
Okay.
move or not.
Okay. Because I know some people might not think it's a big one. I think it is. The Colorado Avalanche acquire forward Yakov Trenin and Graham Sword, sick name,
Graham
from the
Sword.
from the Nashville Predators in exchange for Jeremy Hansel and a third round pick in 2025. I mean, Colorado, I'm giving them an A plus. I think Yakov Trenin
Yeah.
is a great depth add for them. Nashville, I mean, I guess obviously they were planning on moving Trenin, and I don't know really. much about Jeremy Hanzo. I'm assuming he's a prospect. He's so relevant. I click on his name and his player profile comes up with nothing. So I don't really know what to say about him. But a third round pick, I mean, like as
Sixth round pick last year. Yeah,
yeah.
Doesn't look like he's projected to be massive or nothing.
So, I mean, Nashville, you get a third. All right, that's the market value for Trennan. So I'd still give Nashville a B plus, but Avs I'd give an A plus because Trennan fits exactly what they've kind of been looking for to round out their center depth. So not too much to really say on that.
Yeah, I am glad you included that one because I was surprised to see Trennan moved for that low of a return.
When I first saw that return,
because I do think he's a good player. Like, I don't think you'd get anything massive for him, but I think they could have swung a second round pick or more than the third round pick that they got.
And with a return like that, it kind of makes you realize, like, okay, they were set on moving him. Like if that's what they took for him, they already had their minds made up that he was either getting moved, the day before the deadline or on the day of the deadline. And then kind of looking at some of the other trades that came in, like a third round pick is honestly probably fair value. Crazy enough, fucking, 6-7 years ago, they probably honestly get a first round pick for him. So that just goes to show how much the market has changed.
Yeah.
We got a fun one. This is a fun one. This is we only have 2 more left on March 7th, the day before the deadline. The first one, the Tampa Bay Lightning acquire forward Anthony Duclair and a 7th round pick in 2025
Give us those
from the
sevens.
San Jose Sharks in exchange for defenseman prospect Jack Thompson and a 3rd round pick in 2024, this upcoming year. I mean, so this one's tough to grade because I know apparently Jack Thompson's actually kind of regarded as kind of a higher prospect. I don't really know much about him.
But, he was definitely our best defensive prospect, probably our 3rd best prospect overall. He is also a right-handed defenseman,
which is huge for San Jose.
Always
that's huge for them.
Huge for any team, really. They are always in demand. He looks like he's going to be good. He did not make our lineup this year, but I venture to say he was close. And he is very young. There were a lot of guys in the preseason who were much older, much more seasoned than him. He still was one of the best guys playing for us in the preseason and in the prospect games. So I like this trade for both teams, especially if Tampa can extend Duclair, convince him to stick around. I really like the addition of Duclair, but I think Jack Thompson is going to be a good, really good defenseman over in San Jose. I think he's going to be at least a second line or a second pairing defenseman.
Really?
Obviously, if he continues to
that's huge
play at the level projected.
Yeah.
But
if I'm not mistaken, he was.
There's a lot of people who are upset that we moved him.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, he was the Syracuse Crunch's All-Star for the AHL All-Star game. Just a month and a half ago. So
I would not know on that, but I definitely don't doubt it. Absolutely.
But initial thoughts, I mean, Tampa Bay, I mean, you never quite know the prospect, but for Tampa Bay, there's clearly still all in on going for the cup this year. I'd give him an A plus because I'll tell you right now, Anthony Duclair is instantly Tampa Bay's fastest player. He just drives the game with his speed.
We got some quick guys out there.
No, and I know that. I know Mike Eamon has a motor. Yeah, but trust me, when you see Duclair flying,
flies.
And that's the thing. You can put Duclair with, you can put him on the first line with Point, or the second line with Hagel, or the third line with Eamon. Like, if you have him with one of those guys, and you have 2 fast players, that is very good. So I would give Tampa Bay an A plus. San Jose, honestly, I would probably give him an A plus actually, because based on other players getting moved, the market kind of looked like Duclair might actually just go for a 4th. So to get a 3rd round pick and a defensive prospect who's right-handed, which is huge for the Sharks, this is another A plus for both teams. The one thing I will say, and we kind of talked about this because obviously you talked about how it'd be nice if Duclair re-signed with Tampa. I'm not totally sure what the whole thing is with Duclair, because obviously he was representing himself over the last 5 years or so. Recently, leading up to the deadline, he did hire an agent, and kind of talked about how hiring an agent was to help him out with the whole UFA process when he hits free agency. And this was the part that stuck out to me because I've seen lots of players. I follow a lot of teams closely and their writers on Twitter. But I've never seen this before with a team really, where you know Duclair already knew he was being moved, leading up to the deadline. But like in every interview, he was always like talking about how he's going, like, he's going to go to free agency, and he always kept saying that like he wants to come back and sign with San Jose, or the door is always open, and if they want me back, I'd love to come back here. And so it's one of those things where I almost wonder, like, is this, they give Duclair a shot at going for a cup and he comes back and signs? Because I've never seen a player talk so much about being like, oh, when I go to free agency, like, I'm always open to coming back here and want to be here. So
Yeah,
it'll
it'd
be
be
interesting to see
interesting.
whether, I mean, if he goes to Tampa Bay and immediately fits like a glove there, and pops off and Tampa goes on a run, maybe he's like, shit, this is fun. And I mean, he clearly liked playing in Florida and being in that environment. So maybe, maybe Tampa could be a team where if he fits well and they go on a run, he might be like, you know what, let's sign a deal and let's get it done. Or he could go to free agency. But nonetheless, for Tampa, obviously still committed to winning. I love that for them. And I think Duclair is a great ad for that team.
Yeah, I think he is going to be exactly what we wanted Connor Sheary to
Exactly.
be this year.
Yeah.
Connor Sheary, who against the Flames scored his first goal in almost 40 games,
Yeah.
had 2 points somehow. Uh, he has been abysmal for us. I'm surprised he's still playing it in the NHL right now, to be honest. Like, I'm surprised he didn't get sent down at some point. He was supposed to be that guy to fill out the top 6 with the loss of Killorn. And he was
Yeah.
supposed to be on that second line. If Duclair can help drive a line, and him and Sorelli go in and get the puck and just supply it to Stamkos while he's firing him on net, I think that could be fantastic. Or even put him on a third line and put him with Nick Paul, Asamont, Tanner Jeannot, any combination of those guys. Like, I think this is going to be great for us, and I really do hope we can extend him, because I've wanted Duclair for a couple of years now. I've always loved his game. I think he's a great player.
He's a lot of fun to watch, and I mean, and that's a thing. That's another thing that I haven't really seen much when it comes to Sharks, is like Duclair was only there for less than a year, and already the amount of, like, not, you don't really hear much from some of the guys on the main roster, but like the amount of rookies that were upset and like talking about, like, he took me under his wing and was a great mentor to me and helping me take that next step. Like, it shows that a lot of the young guys on the team really looked up to him, and there's a reason why his nickname was Dad to those guys. So that just kind of shows here, like, Tampa's getting a great guy both on the ice and in the locker room. So and then San Jose, I'm happy that, like, Mike Grier's he's just fucking wet for defensive prospects. So I'm glad
He's got a lot of them.
I'm glad he at least got a right-handed one finally, because every other one he's got is all left-handed. It's a log jam there. So
Yeah.
The next deal, probably, I would say the biggest deal potentially. There's some debates there, but happening late on March 7th, it ends up showing that the deal was made official at 11:35 p.m. Eastern time, which we know that news broke that the deal was done like 4 hours earlier. I think it was just because the two teams both were in the middle of they both were playing in their own games, and so obviously the GMs decided to wait and make everything all official after the games. So this is a big one. So the Carolina Hurricanes acquire Jake Gensel at 25% retained, along with defenseman Ty Smith from the Pittsburgh Penguins. This is going to be a struggle. So the Penguins receive Michael Bunting, Ville Koivunen, Cruz Lucius,
Love that name.
Chaz's brother, Vasily Ponomarev, a conditional first round pick in 2024 and a conditional 5th round pick in 2024 going to the Penguins.
Before we get into this one too much, I just want to shout out to Mr. and Mrs. Lucius for having such a sick last name and then naming their kids Cruz and Chaz.
Yeah.
That has so much riz, it flies off the page.
Yeah, I completely agree. Here's the thing that bugs me about the trade. It's a conditional first. And when you hear conditional first, it's like, oh, okay, so maybe it's like, if it's not a certain pick in this year, it's transferred to next year. No, it's either Carolina makes the Stanley Cup final or Pittsburgh gets a 2nd round pick. And that 2nd round pick would be Philadelphia's 2nd round pick as well. So Carolina needs to make the Cup final for Pittsburgh to get that 1st round pick this year.
And Carolina, kind of known for not being able to make it past the Eastern Conference Finals.
Yeah.
They're kind of known for not getting there. So that's a tough condition.
Yeah. And then the 5th round pick this year is also conditional. And it's straight up. If Carolina wins the Cup, Pittsburgh gets it. If Carolina doesn't, Pittsburgh doesn't get that pick. So realistically, it could end up being Michael Bunting, Koivunen, Lucius, Ponomarev, and a 2nd round pick.
That's
Jake Guentzel.
That's the most likely outcome, I would say. They could definitely get the 1st and definitely could get the 5th as well. But
and here's my thing with
most likely
Carolina.
Not.
What is because Carolina is a good team. I think we know that. And adding Jake Guentzel really helps. What has been Carolina's biggest problem in the playoffs?
They've definitely needed a scoring winger, but goaltending.
Okay, well, aside from that, I was going to say they're soft.
Oh, okay. I was going to say bullied. Injuries as well. Yeah,
they get bullied and outmanned. And what do? They take the one guy who is just allegedly, I'm not going to say allegedly, but like just pumping steroids in his ass. He's like just constantly pissed off when he's out there. The one guy with some edge and some grit and some fighting. I mean, I know Bunting hasn't even been there for a full year, but like Bunting is built for Rod Brendamore playoff hockey.
Yeah.
And obviously
Michael,
we know
Kyle
Bunting. Dubas is obsessed with Bunting, so it was no surprise when we knew the deal was done. Guentzel was going, and for 4 hours, all we knew was Michael Bunting is going back. Because why wouldn't Dubas go for Bunting?
Yeah.
I mean, Dubas went the route of quantity over quality, really.
And he's got to hope some of these turn out real nice because I'm not sure if I would love the deal. I think the Hurricanes still win if it's just Jake Guentzel, but Ty Smith attached to that. I know his contract isn't fantastic, but he is a good defenseman. And
no, he's really kind of taken a couple steps back. He definitely
has taken some steps back.
He's already been on waivers and
he's been on waivers even.
Yeah, I mean with Carolina, I mean obviously, actually surprisingly, they didn't end up even moving Tony DeAngelo. So I'm not like Ty Smith probably actually might end up getting sent down to the AHL if DeAngelo's planning on being the 7th defenseman riding it out the rest of the year. Like,
DeAngelo, the day after, actually no, the same day, DeAngelo was placed on waivers. I don't believe he was claimed.
He didn't. I would have. Yeah, he didn't get claimed then because I would have heard about that. So I mean, I guess it's either Ty Smith's the 7th or DeAngelo, and the other one's in the AHL. But again, it's tough to say because again, there's just so many unknowns, especially regarding those conditions. Like if it ends up Pittsburgh gets a 1st this year and a 5th, all right, it's looking better. I just don't like how they didn't even get a 1st round pick locked in, like whether
they couldn't even guarantee themselves a 1st for Guentzel.
Yeah, like that's 2 years. That's tough. Like it. These prospects, I mean, they're all pretty young. I think the oldest is Lucius. I think he's 21 1. So like they are still young prospects.
Ponomarev's supposed to be decent. Like
from
they
what
got some value back.
Yeah, so from what I've seen, from a couple people that I follow that, their whole thing is just prospects. Like that's all they focus on is prospects and keeping tabs on them. So from what, again, take this with a grain of salt because anything can happen. Lucius is actually only 19. All right. So Lucius is 19. Oh, Ponomarov is the 21-year-old, and then Koivunen is 20. So from what I've kind of seen, Koivunen's kind of it sound that what they're saying is his cap is probably a second line center if he can reach that, but that's probably the highest he goes. Lucius is probably gonna be, a middle six winger, probably a third liner, and then Ponomarev is probably going to be like a third liner. So it's additions to the middle six, and again, they're like these players. They could go into Pittsburgh, and their staff could immediately help them reach new heights, especially with the guys they got in that locker room, like Crosby, obviously.
Yeah.
But like first, I mean, Carolina, I'm giving them an A+. The fact that like how many years have Canes fans been screaming for
they were always the
Carolina
bridesmaid
to make a move at the deadline. They never did. They were doing what Edmonton did for so many years.
Yeah. And anytime they wanted a guy, they would miss out and they would have to take second best. They'd have to go get Michael Bunting instead of whoever they want. They didn't get Tarasenko when they wanted him the other offseason. So it is nice to see them get their guy. And I do think this makes them pretty deadly. I do wonder if they asked, what's his name, Damon Severson at all about Ty Smith, reuniting them from their days in New Jersey.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wonder if they asked him at all, is this guy worth bringing in? What do you think? Or, I have no idea how much they consult different players on things like that, but it'll be interesting to see if, maybe they can rekindle a little chemistry there and maybe bring Smith's game back up.
Yeah. Yeah, because again, like there's still potential for Smith. Like there's no denying that. He's definitely got the skill. He just needs to translate it.
He earned the contract he has now through his play and his hard work. So if he can get back to that, that'll be even more massive for Carolina. They'll have another great defenseman.
Yeah. Pittsburgh, again, it's so tough to say. I'm probably going to give them a B just because you didn't get a guaranteed first. That should have been your number one priority, was at least getting a first round pick, whether it's this year, next year, 2026, at least making sure you got one. And
yeah, I think I'd give it a C or a C+ because of that.
And
I like the other pieces, but that first with the conditions is tough.
And now it's like you're a Pittsburgh fan. It's like you got to go into the playoffs and you got to be rooting for Carolina. Like whether you love them or hate them, you got to be cheering for them because you want that first round pick. Who cares? You could be like, you know what? I'm fine with them going to making the cup final and losing. Who cares about that fifth? But they want that first round pick.
What if Pittsburgh turns it around and makes the playoffs?
I hope not. No,
I doubt it.
I don't want that. I don't want that. Not anymore.
But what does the GM feel then? If you run up against Carolina at all, even if it's in the third round, you'd have to lose to them to get that first round pick. So,
yeah,
it's an awkward set of circumstances.
I'm curious to see where Michael Bunting fits in with the Penguins. I'm assuming they probably start him off with Crosby or Malkin, and because he just seems to be Dubas's golden boy. So,
yeah, he sure loves them. So. I imagine he's in the middle six there for a good while.
Yeah. So that wraps up
the seventh.
All the deals for the seventh. We're going on a good amount of time, but you know what?
I was gonna say
It's
we're coming
trade
up on 2
deadline
hours here.
season. It's trade deadline season,
It is
and
trade
people
deadline
love it.
season.
You know what? If people got to listen to us over a whole week span of their trips to work, you know what? We're all about giving back to our fans. So,
A lot of stuff
um,
happened. A lot of stuff happened.
yeah. You know what? You know what? Yeah, this is a big one. The very first deal that happened today on the day of the deadline, the Washington Capitals trade Evgeny Kuznetsov to the Carolina Hurricanes at 50% retained for a third round pick in 2025. I like this for both teams. I really do. Um, a pluses for both, really.
Really, A plus for both.
Well, I mean, like Washington, Kuznetsov looked like a dead contract that was immovable based on his recent play, especially after his whole stepping away from the team and whatnot. It just really looked like they were just going to be saddled with it. And so, you know what? A third round pick would have been nice for them to get more, but they were at least able to move on from the deal. They did right by, a guy who was a huge part of them winning their first Stanley Cup in franchise history. And for Carolina, I mean, you get Kuznetsov, who, if you can get him back to what he was, you know, you got a 70-point player in your hands there. You got a guy who's a beast in the playoffs.
That's fair.
You could argue Kuznetsov has scored the biggest goal in Washington Capitals playoff history. That overtime winner to knock out the Penguins and what eventually went on to that team winning the cup. Like,
Yeah.
it's a low, like, and you're only giving up a third round pick, and we know Carolina's got the cap space, so why not take a flyer on a guy that could end up being a great third line center power play specialist for him? I mean, for a third
That's
round
fair.
pick,
I
why
would have
not?
liked to see them weaponize that cap space a little bit better because I do think this is an A plus from Washington's perspective. They already had him in the minors. As soon as he came back from the NHL Players Assistance Program, he immediately went on waivers. I love the deal from
But
Washington's
did
side.
you hear what happened after waivers?
But I don't know. I don't know if he's gonna be able to come back and be that guy in Carolina.
So did
No,
you
I
see what
didn't.
happened after? So he went down to the Hershey Bears, and the Hershey Bears had a 7.5 hour bus ride for one of their games.
Yeah.
And wouldn't you know it, Kuznetsov is down there on the bus with the boys. He's coming off the bus after 7.5 hours, all smiles and love and life. On the bench in practice with the Hershey Bears, having fun and laughing. He looked like him old self. He looked rejuvenated. He looked like he was in his prime, just enjoying the game and having fun, even though he's down in the minors now. And I think you get him in Carolina. I think there's potential that they could, even if he only ends up being a 40-point guy or something. If they go on to win the cup this year with the additions of him again, so it's a win no matter what. And I
Oh yeah.
think from what we've seen that Kuznetsov can do in the playoffs, I don't know. I think there's a chance he could be a huge piece for Carolina, and he's got the experience. Like, they
That's
brought
true.
in Gensel, who's got 2 cups. They bring in Kuznetsov, who's got a cup. Like, that's some experience they're bringing in.
Yeah, I definitely have a little less faith in Kuznetsov coming back to form. If
Which is fair.
if he does look
That's fair.
good, like if he does look good and like him old self, it's gonna be a bad look on Washington just because he immediately went on waivers and down into the minors. He didn't. They didn't even give him a chance to see how you looking. It looks like he right away was thrown back down. So
Well, he wanted out, and so
oh,
they
okay.
kind of took the chance of he already requested a trade earlier, I think multiple times actually. So I think once he
Okay,
came
yeah.
back, Washington went, all right, let's put him on waivers and see if anyone will even just claim him for his contract at full. And then no
Yeah.
one did. So they're like, you know what? And I give Washington credit. They did right by their guy and they moved him. I'm
Yeah.
sure they're not happy about retaining 50% of that big contract for the rest of this year and next year, but they did right by their player. And that
And
goes a
they
long
gotta,
way in the future when guys look at signing theirs, being like, you know what?
yeah,
This is like Max Pacioretty. They were kind of throwing his name around, seeing if there was a deal. And Pacioretty said, you know what? You know, I'm coming off this Achilles injury. I'm kind of happy actually just sticking it out here and being part of the team. Washington said, you know what? That's fair. We will honor that. If you want to be here, we will tell everybody you're off the market, and that's what they did. So, say what you want about Washington, but they do right by their players.
yeah. And you know what? It paid off for him because
Yeah.
instead of keeping them in the minors doing nothing for 2 years, they got a 3rd-round pick.
Yeah, exactly. So it gives Kuznetsov a fresh start. It allows Washington to kind of take that next step into the. I mean, I guess you can kind of call it a new era for them now.
Yeah. It'll officially be a new era once Ovechkin's done, but
yeah,
it's not officially the new era yet, but it kind of is because
it's starting to get there.
It's more about how many goals does Ovi have each year, and not are we making the playoffs.
Yeah. So the next big deal. This is a pretty big one because there's actually more stuff that I think is included aside from the actual deal. But the Winnipeg Jets were not done loading up on their forwards. They acquired Tyler Toffoli from the New Jersey Devils in exchange for a 3rd-round pick in 2024 and a 2nd-round pick in 2025. And they also retained 50% of Toffoli's contract, which is up at the end of the year. I mean,
A+ for Winnipeg.
A+ for Winnipeg.
Absolutely.
New Jersey, honestly, I'm giving them an A.
You're giving them an A?
I'm giving them an A, and I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
Because I said this and someone said, "Oh no, like no." And I was like, "Well, so I'm just going to pull it up here." So the New Jersey Devils held out Tyler Toffoli last night. Because obviously they're planning on trading him. So they didn't want to risk injuring him or anything. So they said, you know what, you're just going to sit out and we're going to go on our game. They played. And I said it from the beginning. I said, Tyler Toffoli is so similar to Timo Meier that this is why we're not seeing Timo Meier play to his standards, because he's having to share the same role with Toffoli. And when you know it, Toffoli sits out. Timo Meier goes out there against the St. Louis Blues. New Jersey wins 4-1. Timo Meier, 3 goals, 1 assist. He's a +3, 7 shots on goal. So my opinion, really, New Jersey's getting a 3rd, a 2nd, and they're getting Timo Meier back. Because Timo Meier can now actually be Timo Meier. He can play that top 6 role, and he can be that shooter on a line. He doesn't have to share with Toffoli or whoever. Like, Meier can go out there and he can be him. And I think they put him on a line with Nico Hischier and Andre Palat. So
love that line.
Yeah. And apparently that's a line actually that Jim Nill never put together. And I think a big part of it is really because I think Toffoli was still in the mix.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, if you're moving out Toffoli, like, I know New Jersey loved him, but if this is the Timo Meier that you're going to start to see, I mean, honestly, I'd give them both A pluses, actually.
I don't know. Like, I definitely see what you're getting at, and I do agree. I do think, Timo Meier's playing too far down in the lineup. He is not a 3rd-line guy. He was not getting the minutes he needed. But I still think you could have got a lot more for a guy like Tyler Toffoli.
But that's the thing in this market. I'm not sure you could. With the way that the market is nowadays, it's not what it used to be. Like, guys like Nick Foligno used to go for, I think he went for a 1st, a 3rd, and a 4th or something. As crazy as that sounds, and that was a pure rental. And I think Toffoli is obviously a rental for Winnipeg. I don't think they can keep him long term, but
yeah, and I don't think they plan to. with just how much center or forward depth they have now at this point.
Yeah.
I do think they still could have got a bit more for him, but
I think New Jersey honestly probably could have
I
actually
think
gotten
less
2
than normal.
seconds. I think, you know what? I think 2 seconds actually probably would have been fair. I think that would have been fair for Toffoli.
Yeah. Or you know what?
But
Try and make
again,
a
yeah,
deal to get a goalie from somewhere with them. But I guess they did go out and address that later on, which we'll talk about.
with a couple teams. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm still, yeah, I'll probably actually keep New Jersey at an A, because I really do think that they probably could have squeezed 2 second round picks out of Winnipeg, especially considering they did retain 50%. But I mean, for Winnipeg, this is 100% an A plus. They're very committed to
They've got a
going all in.
lot of
So,
depth. They don't have a weak spot on that lineup.
yeah. So the next deal, this is probably the smallest deal, but I'm counting it as a big deal because it does involve a captain in the league. The Florida Panthers acquire Kyle Poso from Buffalo in exchange for Callie Sandlin and a 7th round pick. So really, again, it's Buffalo's really not getting much back at all for their captain Oposo, but at the end of the day, Oposo, it sounds like he wanted to go to Florida, and they're doing right by their captain, their veteran, who's been through the ringer there in some horrible years in Buffalo, never making the playoffs once since signing that big 7-year deal ages ago. So Buffalo doing right by, actually, I think it was more than 7 years ago now, actually. But then Buffalo doing right by their captain, and I think it's a solid depth add for Florida. So I mean, Buffalo, they really didn't get anything, so I'll give them a C just for doing right by their player. And Florida, I'll give him an A, because you know what, Oposo is a great veteran leader. He can log 4th line minutes and still be effective and a great forechecker, and you didn't have to give up anything for him.
Yeah.
So it's a nice depth add by the Panthers.
Yeah. Low risk. There's not much to say. Ogpost is a good guy in the locker room, it's by all accounts, but might be time to move on over in Buffalo. You know, finally get. You got to imagine Darlene with the C. He's looking like he's going to be that guy for them for the next 15 years if he wants to stay. So,
yeah. This is not really a big one, but I know you kind of at the end of this, you did say you did have some thoughts on what the Sharks did at the deadline. So I will just quickly throw this one in here. The San Jose Sharks acquired forward Klim Kostin from the Detroit Red Wings in exchange for defenseman Radim Bobby or Shimek, as I like to call him, and a 7th round pick in 2024. Really, it's the swapping of players that just don't have room on the team. Sharks just don't have room for Shimek. Weirdly enough, it was like a month ago. He played all year in the AHL, and it was like a month ago they named him captain, and then they just traded him. So I don't know. I just think that's kind of odd and bizarre. But nonetheless, really, there was no room for Shimek. San Jose just had a stacked defensive group, and Klim Kostin, Detroit kind of took a flyer on him when
hasn't worked out.
Yeah, when Edmonton kind of had to move him out, and it just really didn't work out. So maybe a nice change of scenery will help out both of these guys, and give Kostin a chance to make a name for himself in the NHL, and
almost like
Shimek
Zadina,
to get back in.
kind of see if he can prove himself with a little more ice time. He's got more room to grow, because he clearly wasn't getting into the top 6 or even top 9 really with Detroit. So, you know, he's going to get a decent amount of ice time with the Sharks, and love to see the guys be able to turn it around.
Yeah. Yeah. The next deal, the New Jersey Devils got a goalie.
They did it.
And it's not Markstrom. They acquired Jake Allen at 50% retained for the remainder of this year and next year. from the Montreal Canadiens in exchange for a conditional third-round pick in 2025 that goes to a second-round pick if Jake Allen plays 40 games for the Devils. I think it's 40 games. So assuming he's probably going to be the starter now, especially after their other move, which involved shipping out Vitek Vanacek, who's kind of their starter. So it's kind of safe to assume that Jake Allen's their starter. So basically, it's probably
unless
Jake Allen for a
Allen,
second.
unless Jake Allen really does not play well and fit in with their system or something, that's probably going to be a second round pick. I like it from both sides. Jake Allen's been pretty solid for him, and clearly Montembeault and some of their other guys, they look like that's going to be the future of the crease in Montreal. And Jake Allen was always going to get moved at some point on this contract. We just didn't know when. I like this from both sides. I'm surprised that right at the end of the deadline, the Devils are just like, screw it. We're
totally addressing the goaltending needs.
Yeah, we'll take Allen. We'll take Kakkonen. Like, something's got to work eventually. I'm surprised they didn't go for a more elite goalie, just because, they brought in Vanacek when it looked like he could be the guy, and then he wasn't. And they keep bringing in new goalies, and it's not working. It's very similar to Edmonton. You might have to bite the bullet and pay a hefty price to get a established good goaltender, a bona fide starter or borderline elite guy, and then you got your guy. But I do like this move for them. I think it gives them a good chance at making the playoffs, or at least preparing for next year to make the playoffs. Hoping you get a healthy year out of Jack Hughes finally. So.
So just quickly go back to the Klim Kostin, Ferretti, and Schmidt trade. I'd give both teams a B, really, just because I think both teams kind of it's just a swap of guys, give them a change of scenery, but it's not really a needle move for either sides. But I give credit to both sides for giving that player a fresh start. In terms of this one, I'd probably honestly give both teams just a straight up A. I think it helps New Jersey address their goaltending situation, and for Montreal to potentially get a second round. It probably will be a second round pick. Let's be honest. Like I don't see Jake Allen being the backup unless New Jersey goes and gets like a Jacob Markstrom at during the offseason. So I'm assuming it's a second. I think it's a win for both sides. I think Montreal had to move out a goalie. Jake Allen was the oldest and kind of close to an expiring deal, and it helps New Jersey out their goaltending situation. So I've got no issues there for either team. Next up, this was a weird one because I didn't know he was on the move, but the Boston Bruins acquired defenseman Andrew Peeke from the Columbus Blue Jackets for Jacob Zaboral and a 2027 third round pick.
Massive 2027 third round pick there.
I mean, like Boston, I probably give him an A because I think Peeke has way more value than Zaboral. I think Peeke maybe just needs a change of scenery and could fit in well in Boston's system. Columbus, I mean, I always kind of thought Peeke was pretty decent for him, and to get Zaboral, who's, I mean, former first round pick, but really kind of hasn't really panned out much. And then a third round pick that's, years down the line. Like you can't even view it on Cap Friendly right now because it's that far in the future. So.
Yeah, the GM who's made this trade is probably never going to see that pick. Like it's not a horrible deal for them. I think they could have got a little bit more, but yeah, I like this for Boston.
Yeah, Boston, I'd give them an A. Columbus, really, probably a C+.
Yeah.
But really not a huge trade for either side. I mean, it definitely helps out Boston in their run and kind of beefing up their defense. So I guess we kind of mentioned it, so we'll go into it. The San Jose Sharks acquired Vitek Vanacek and a 2025 seventh round pick in exchange for Kaapo Kähkönen, and the Sharks ended up flipping that seventh round pick to the Buffalo Sabres for goaltender Devin Cooley. I mean, at this point, I don't even know what Mike Greer's doing. I feel like Kakinen holds more value than Vanacek, and to basically swap them, and not only that, you're giving New Jersey the younger goalie, who I think is better. You're also taking Vanacek, who's got this year and next year on a pretty outrageous cap hit for how he plays. And then that 7th round pick, you flip to Buffalo for uh, a 26-year-old AHL goalie who I think he has like a 381 goals against this season and a 890 save percentage or something. So like really, he's he's not going to be an NHL backup or starter for the Sharks. So
Yeah.
I mean, New Jersey,
One
I'd give him an A plus. You get Kakinen and you get out of Vanacek's deal. So at the price of a 7th.
I I really like this deal for the Sharks, actually. I think most goalies that go to New Jersey are gonna look worse than on most teams because they don't
That is true.
play super well defensively. They got a lot
They're
of
bad.
young,
They're bad.
skilled, fast offensive players. Yeah, and they're bad defensively. And Vitek Vanacek, like he earned that contract before playing well over in I believe it was Washington,
Yeah.
and he went to New Jersey and fell off a cliff. And maybe we see something very similar to with Blackwood. Uh, he'll they take Vanacek, they bring him over, you give him a new system. You got guys like Mario Ferraro actually blocking a couple shots, and maybe his numbers look better, and then you can flip him next year,
Yeah.
or
And
maybe
it
he
is
looks
worth
serviceable
noting.
enough to keep.
It is worth noting that Vitek Vanacek is done for the season. That was said by both New Jersey and San Jose's GMs after the deal, that he's like with his injury, he is done for the year. So we won't even see Vitek Vanacek suit up for the Sharks until next year. And assuming that the tandem will now be, instead of Blackwood and Kakinen, it will now be Blackwood and Vanacek. So we're just running New Jersey's goaltending tandem from a couple years ago. And then they
Yeah.
flipped that 7th for Devin Cooley, who I think they're really just bringing him in because I think Blackwood's going to be out long term. So he's just going to kind of come in, and you run a tandem with him and the your
Whoever, I
prospect
suppose.
goalie Magnus Corona, which at the end of the day, because we're not even done talking about the Sharks, it's very clear they're tanking, they're rebuilding, they're tearing it down. So all in all, I'd give New Jersey an A. The Sharks, it's tough to tell with Vanacek. I give them probably a B. Just because Vanacek, yeah, you could get back for him, you could flip him. But it would be hard because San Jose now has no retention spots. So 2 deals left to go through that we've got left for this episode. This one I think is one of the biggest steals. The Tampa Bay Lightning acquire Matt Dumba and a 7th round pick in 2025 in exchange for a 5th round pick in 2027. Again, if you're going cap friendly, you can't even see that 5th round pick.
That's 4 drafts from now in the 5th round. I've seen a couple Lightning fans upset with this trade, and not only do I like bringing in Dumba, I think there's a good chance we can kind of bring him back to, even a shred of his former glory. But who's complaining about losing a 5th round pick in 4 drafts? Like,
Yeah.
The bold italics underline, who cares?
Yeah.
We got
And that
Matt
5th
Dumba
round
for a
pick,
bag of pucks.
Tampa can easily flip a nobody and get a 5th round pick back over the next 3 years.
Yeah,
And they're getting a 7th round pick 2 years before Arizona even gets that 5th.
yeah.
So
We have 7 7th round picks in the next 2 years. We're
yeah,
we're looking for some gems down there in the
some
bottom.
diamonds in the rough. I think Matt Dumba is a great addition for Lightning. I give them an A plus.
Yeah, I love this.
Arizona, at one point they were asking for a 1st for Dumba.
He's
And
had
they
a
got
tough
they
year.
got a 5th. He has had a tough year. So Arizona, I mean, I give him a D. probably. I would say,
Yeah,
just because I mean, at least they were able to get something back from. Like, it was very
they
clear when they
literally
brought
got
him in.
something for him.
It was you come in, you know, try and improve your value here. We'll trade you at the deadline. Hope you can get a bigger contract. Obviously, Dumba's not going to get a big contract after this season, but it's a great ad for Tampa. It's a great addition on the right hand side for them.
Very little risk to it.
If they make the playoffs, I think he
like-
can be a good addition for them. So I like it for Tampa.
Yeah.
And yeah, then there was one. The final trade. So I watched like for most of the morning. I ended up watching most of the trade deadline stuff on TV, kind of keeping along with it. I had a meeting I had to go to, and then I got a text from someone, and they said that they were like, and this was like when there was about like 10 minutes left in the deadline, and I got a text, and they said it sounds like Vegas is planning to make one more big splash before the deadline. So I was like, all right, well, they're getting Buchnevich. Like, I was like, all right, so all the rumors I've been hearing and my speculations are confirmed. They're getting Pavel Buchnevich. What are they going to give up? About 5 minutes later, I get a text and it just says, "Are you sitting down?" And I'm like, "Oh fuck, what happened now?" And then before I could even get the text, I get the notification that the San Jose Sharks traded fan favorite, like Joe Thornton level fan favorite, Tomas Hertl to the Vegas Golden Knights, along with a third round pick in 2025 and a third round pick in 2027. Tomas Hertl coming in with retained salary at 17% from the Sharks in exchange for prospect David Edstrom and a first round pick in 2025. And so that kind of ties back to the Noah Hanifin deal, which is why the conditions were there, because we knew when those conditions came, Vegas was trading this 2025 first round pick. So now
you don't make that condition without knowing you're going to do something with it.
Yeah. So Calgary gets Vegas's 2026 first round pick, no conditions, unprotected. Calgary's got it now. And San Jose gets Vegas's 2025 first round pick, no conditions, no protection. The Sharks have it now. I mean,
so the Sharks one for this year is unprotected.
Next year, 2025.
Oh, right. Sorry. Again, so many 2025 picks have been moved. I've been gaslit.
There's only the one. There's only the one first. And I think that was the pick from Edmonton to Anaheim. I think that was the only first round pick this year that was moved.
Yeah. And when this trade broke initially, whoever broke it,
Darren
Dreger, when he just listed all the things, people didn't realize at the time. People originally thought that the Sharks were giving up Hertl and getting back Edstrom a first and 2/3. And then everyone realized they're giving up a Hertl and 2/3 for Edstrom and a first.
Mm-hmm.
Which it would have been a lot easier to stomach if it was the other way around. It still would have been tough.
I mean, at the end of the day, like, yeah, it does suck giving up those third round picks because it is like, draft capital and can be used to make trades. More ammo. Realistically, the Sharks don't hit on third round picks. The only third round pick in the last 15 years that looks good is Daniil Gushkin. So really the third round picks, the Sharks would have probably messed up with anyways.
That's how Tampa looks at our first round.
But like, fuck, man. He goes from big money Mike to big dead money Mike.
To bankrupt Mike.
And here's the thing I'll say, because obviously my phone has just been flooded from people about this trade. And here's the thing I'll say. It was the right move to trade Tomas Hertl. As much as I love him, as much as he was a fan favorite, as much as everything he brought to the table for this team, realistically, he probably should have been moved a couple years ago when he was on that expiring deal.
Right.
Um, and looking at it now, it's very clear that, Mike Greer's like, instead of making it a slow burn, let's just rip the Band-Aid off. Brent Burns has now been traded. Eric Carlson's been traded. Tomas Hertl's been traded. Logan Couture, I mean, is probably the most miserable human in San Jose right now. It needed to happen. Hertl's you still got this year and 6 years remaining left on his deal, which is why it stings to retain salary, because that's so much dead money for so long. And
Yeah.
that's one of your retention spots.
How
gone.
much are they retaining? Like it's 17%, but do you know the number?
It's about
Is that
like
around
one. It's about
a
like
mil?
one, just a little bit under 1.5. So it's not an egregious amount of money. But when you just look at the fact that it's for this year and the next 6 years, and it also takes away retention spots when you're a rebuilding team where you can be a broker in deals and you can retain on, like a Matt Dumba or something. You can get a 4th-round pick back for doing so or something like that. They
Yeah.
can't do that now for the
That's worth
remainder of
more
this
than
year
Dumba.
or next year. Yeah, actually is worth more than Dumba. Maybe would have been like a 7th or something. But it's just like out of all the
it is confusing that they couldn't save that retention spot, and they couldn't get the deal done without the retention spot there. I mean, or they couldn't get the deal done with the retention and without at least one of the 3rd-round picks. Like there's a lot about this deal that I don't understand. Like you said, I do think this will legit help them in the future. Edstrom looks like he's going to be good. He's having a solid season in the SHL this year.
In my opinion, he's and this is even what the pro scouts have him listed as. He's going to end up being like a 3rd-line center. And I know people are like, oh, he's like a former 1st-round pick. Think of it this way. He was drafted at the very end of the 1st round. If Seattle wasn't in the league, he would have been a guy taken in the 2nd round. You can call him a 1st, you can call him a 2nd. Realistically, he's basically you can call him a 2nd-round pick. He was the very tail end of the 1st round. And then that 1st-round pick in 2025 is probably going to be in the, assuming things keep going well for Vegas. Yeah. So, and again, and I know GMs don't look into much, but it's just like, out of all the teams you could have traded him to,
yeah,
of all the teams, you knew the Rangers were heavy in on the center market. You knew the Bruins were, and you chose to settle for Vegas. And in my opinion, I think you lost the deal.
You could have got so much more there. Like what if it was Tomas Hertl and one of those 3rd-round picks for Alexei Lafreniere or something like that,
or Capo Caco or something.
Like there was something there. It so much blows my mind that those 2 3rd-round picks should not even be in there. Like they shouldn't be in that trade. Even if it was Hertl with retained for Edstrom and a 1st, that's still not enough for Tomas Hertl. I don't know how that phone call went, and I can't figure it out. I've been thinking about it all day, and I can't figure it out. Like, so does Vegas's GM, like, surely Mike Greer didn't call up and with this entire thing done and say, do you want this? And Vegas says yes. There's no way. But so did Vegas's GM go, hey, I think Mike Greer's a fucking chump. I'm going to send him a text. And he sent this, and he said, yeah, sure. Or did the negotiation start elsewhere and develop to this? Was the initial trade worse than this? Or did Greer get talked down to this somehow? Like, I don't even know. This deal is so unbalanced in Vegas's favor that I don't understand how the conversation could even begin, And
I'm totally with you.
And like I said, I think Edstrom's going to be a decent NHL player, and they are getting a 1st-round pick in a good draft, so I do think this will make them a better team in the long run, but it's one of those situations where it's good, but like you could have got a lot more.
But like I will say this now, this Sharks team is so fucked. Like it is ridiculously bad. Because now Couture's miserable. He couldn't keep it together during his interview talking about it, and he basically all but said, "I'm done here." He basically said like a trade
Yeah.
is happening now. Like he doesn't want to be here anymore because the team's not going to be competitive for 5 years at the bare minimum.
Yeah. They were
All his
already the
friends are
team
gone.
probably furthest from being competitive in the
Yeah.
entire league, unless you want to count teams that have have a bad chance at it, like a Washington, who they're
Yeah.
like on
They're stuck
still
in
on the
no man's
decline
land.
before they build up.
Yeah.
But as far as rebuilding teams, San Jose's the farthest out, and this puts them back another year or two.
And now with Couture, I mean, we don't know with Couture because we know he's done for the year because of this nagging injury. He's hoping to be back next year. But how do you trade him? You can't retain salary on him because you've now used up your 3 retention spots for the next, year and a half now. So you'd have to find a team that's willing to take his contract as a whole, and in doing so, you probably don't get a good return. And I mean, I know, there's people that are like, well, now the Sharks have $38 million in cap space during free agency.
They
You're
got to
gonna have
sign a lot of people.
you're gonna have to overpay like crazy to convince players to come play there. No one's gonna take, a fair contract
And
for them to come play for a bottom feeding, like a team that realistically is going to be way worse next year than this year. Because Thomas Hertl's a big reason
yeah,
for a majority of the Sharks wins. So you're gonna have to overpay, and then in doing so, how do you even flip those players down
yeah.
the road at the deadline when you can't retain on them?
The whole thing as one of these bottom teams is you want to sign these guys to
Movable contract.
1 or 2 million more than what other teams can pay, so that you make sure you get them. And then it's for 1 or 2 years, and then you retain at the deadline and send them out. If you can't
Yeah.
retain and you're paying a $3 million player 5.5,
Probably six.
you can't
Honestly.
you can't move that. So they got to make
Yeah.
sure if they're doing that this offseason, if they're signing all these guys to 1 year deals. It has to be 1 year deals so that they can at least move it through the Ducks, through Arizona, through Columbus, so that these other teams can retain, because you can't.
Mhm.
And because they're the team retaining 50%, not 25% like you are, you're probably going to have to give a bigger chunk of that return to these other teams now. And
Yeah.
it's a very tough deal. I can't believe they retained for that long. There's a lot of parts to it to not
Yeah.
like, which really sucks.
And like I'm wearing my Hurdle jersey right now for our fallen soldier who now has to go be part of the Golden Knights. And I am happy for Hurdle because like he deserves to have the chance to go and be on a competitive team in his prime and go for a cup. I really wish it wasn't Vegas, but he does have a good chance to win a cup. So I do like that the Sharks did right by him because it was always he wanted to stay in San Jose. That was it. And then as he saw the trajectory of the team, he didn't ask for a trade, but when they asked me, he said, I'm open to a move if you guys find one that you think is fair. Which is why he obviously did waive his no movement clause to go to Vegas.
How sick would it have been if they were like, "We've got the trade in place. Do you want to waive it?" And he goes, "What's the return?" And they tell him, and he goes, "No, I'm not going to waive it for this deal. Do better."
Nah, I would have been more happy if you just said, "No, I don't want to go to Vegas." I would have liked that more.
That's fair.
The biggest thing I can say is the only way that this trade even looks somewhat okay for the Sharks is if through trading her, because we know he was gonna come back at some point during the regular season. If and like the Sharks have 20 games left with this team they have now, knowing that Couture and Hertl ain't coming back, they maybe win 3 games.
And you
Maybe.
said Mackenzie Blackwood's out too, right?
Yeah.
And they've traded Kakinen, and
Yeah.
Vanacek is injured.
Yeah. The only way
If the
this trade
Blackhawks
looks
win this
somewhat.
fucking lottery, dude.
And that's the thing. The Sharks, if they get first overall pick and they get Celebrini, and honestly at this point, Mike Grier might honestly just be like, "Hey, Cole Iserman, fucking come hang out, come on down." Probably not actually because Celebrini goes to Boston University, which is where Mike Grier's from. But like that's the only way that this looks okay is if through trading Hurdle, the Sharks get so much worse that they land that very first overall pick in franchise history. And when it's a story of a kid who kind of grew up in San Jose, he played for the junior Sharks. His dad still lives in the area. He's kind of from it. It's like if the Sharks don't get the first overall pick this year, this rebuild is so long and it is so painful. And the owner is already complaining about the lack of people that are attending games. And it's like, buddy, you're in you're like, this is the first year of the trenches, like being the worst team in the league. If you're upset now, like buddy, you've got a
I do
long
think this
couple
is
years.
the worst of it.
This is the bottom of the barrel. This year and next year is
that is the silver lining. At least you do have good prospects. This current team right now, I think, is the worst that it will be. Partly because I don't see how it could get worse at the moment.
That's the thing, like,
which is pretty bleak.
I don't know how it can get worse.
But I do think as, you build it back up from the ashes, over the next 3-4 years, you're going to get more and more top 5, top 10 at best picks. You're just going to keep getting those guys, the Will Smiths, the Thruns, the Eklunds. They're going to improve. It's tough. It's very tough.
It's so tough when you're, and I think back because honestly, I remember looking at it, I'm like, fuck, I can't even imagine if my team goes through that. But my first thought when I saw this deal was I thought back to 2025? Was it that long ago? Phil Kessel's trade out of Toronto. My first thought was when Phil Kessel was moved out of Toronto and they were, or 2015, sorry.
Yeah.
And it was like they were kind of going through that rebuild and guys were slowly getting moved out, and it was like their cornerstone guy, Phil Kessel, the fan favorite, got moved, and it just ruined that fan base. I remember looking,
it gutted him.
I thought at the time I was like that was like the Joe Pavelski to San Jose. I was like, I couldn't even imagine him getting shipped out, and now here we are, Thomas Hertl, basically, being like Phil Kessel in San Jose. Getting moved and getting an underwhelming return. The silver lining is the following year, Kessel went on to win a cup with Pittsburgh. Hertl might go on to win a cup with Vegas, and Toronto got Austin Matthews first overall. Don't know what's going to happen here with San Jose, but
who knows? Will Smith Celebrini could be your Matthews and Marner.
Yeah, and like, it's just tough when you trade your best player. You get such an underwhelming return. And it's also funny because Jeff Merrick was talking about the Sharks, was talking about the potential of Mario Ferraro being moved. And he was saying, like, I don't know how you move Ferraro when in terms of what he brings to the team, his attitude and everything, he could be a future, Sharks captain and throughout this rebuild and the up and coming throughout the rebuild. And everybody's like, well, like, you've got Couture, you've got Hertl, like Ferraro's third on the list. All of a sudden, boom, Hertl's traded. Couture, honestly, might not ever play again, depending on this injury. And if he does come back, he's probably going to want out. So all of a sudden, it's like, oh shit, Ferraro might actually be captain a lot sooner than we thought, considering he didn't get moved at the deadline. But I don't know. Like, I'm trying to see Mike Grier's vision because I know you had to move Hertl. If it didn't happen now, it would have been in the offseason.
I can see the vision. I've just had a thought partway through this conversation. And it is not quite the same. It's a little more projected in the other situation because obviously Hertl is an established, all-star level guy. But this is not insanely unsimilar to the Brandon Hagel deal, where it was a team that was doing very bad, but they weren't quite doing bad enough. And so they have this guy they want to keep. He looks like he's going to be great, but they move him out, even though he fits the timeline, even though he's what you want, because they really wanted Connor Bedard.
Well,
They wanted to be as garbage as possible.
Hurdle didn't fit the timeline. Like,
and that's true.
Whether Sharks fans want to admit it or not, it was either we all thought, honestly, I mean, I didn't want to believe it, but I kind of knew he was going to get moved in the offseason, was kind of my thought. I didn't think it was going to be dropped 11th hour by the Vegas Golden Knights, snaking them.
With no, there was no rumors.
There was no talk.
There was nothing. One of the most brutal parts.
There was nothing.
There was nothing linking Knights to them. Hurdle being moved, none of that.
Like,
and that's one of the things that makes it so brutal.
A big splash at the end, it's like, well, it's got to be Buchnevich. That's the only big name left. Yeah. And all of a sudden, this. So, but I get what you're saying. Like, this is part of it. This is this might be the new norm. Seeing teams that are near the bottom of the league, one of the bottom 3 teams, every second or third year when there's a really, really good first overall going, you might see more of this where teams are just like, well, we want that franchise guy, so they send out some of their other elite players or a really good top 6 guy, and they just don't get near as much back as they should for him because they're just getting rid of guys, because players do not tank, but front offices do. Yeah, exactly. And so, San Jose and Chicago are both tied with 37 points, bottom of the league. Next closest is Anaheim with 49.
And they're bad.
Like, that's 12 points. So realistically,
they're bad. So you guys are both 12 below?
It's San Jose and Chicago at the bottom. San Jose does have one game in hand. They do play each other 2 more times this season, so those are big games. But again, this is like,
those will be weirdly fun to watch.
Blackwood, honestly, with these moves, I'm not sure he's coming back. Hurdle definitely ain't coming back, not for the Sharks at least. And Couture's not coming back. So it's, you're.
Could you imagine if it came out that Vegas never asked Hurdle about his no movement clause and he actually didn't waive it? Trade gets nixed?
No, that would just be San Jose to do it. Actually, I tweeted this out, and this is basically how I feel and how every other Sharks fan said they feel. This trade is basically to give it a real world example.
Yeah.
It's basically, this is the equivalent of you having a girlfriend. You let her marry your biggest enemy, but you pay for them for all their dates that they go on. That's basically what this is. We're paying Tomas Hertl money to go play for Vegas for the next 6.5 years.
I felt so crappy.
Awful.
I felt so crappy after you texted me saying that Hertl was traded. I was gutted. I love the Sharks, so I was gutted in that sense, but also just for you. And then I was like, well, fucking Christ, who has the cap space for him? And then you said Vegas, and I was like, oh my God.
Else. Like, going to Boston, I think he would have been perfect. Him and Pasternak.
I felt so boys together this morning hearing that Maroon went to the Bruins. And I love Big Rig, but he was not around. He was not around as long as Hertl in San Jose, and he certainly wasn't playing at the level Hertl was. Yeah. So that's tough.
I mean, I don't know if we have any Sharks fans listening. Probably not, because let's face it, we're all dead inside. We don't want to admit it.
Because what Sharks fans are consuming hockey content at this point? Yeah. They're just gonna take a 3-year break and see how it is then.
Mm-hmm. Like the only things you can think of really that's a silver lining in this is, the chance of getting Celebrini goes up because the Sharks get much worse. It's going to be a late round pick in 2025. The best you can hope for is they end up, hitting a jackpot on a guy like Quentin Musty, who last weekend I think he had 3 goals and 2 assists in one game, and then tonight I think he had 3 goals and 4 assists. Like, he's just absolutely tearing it up. He's the next coming of kind of like a Timo Meier for the Sharks. And then David Edstrom, projected to be a third line center, could maybe take that next step, but he is Swedish, so he kind of fits in with those kind of two forwards they're trying to build around on the main roster right now in Eklund and Zetterlund. But like overall, right now, I'd give the Sharks a B. Like I'd give the Golden Knights like an A plus because I think getting Hurdlin coming in, I think they're only going to be paying him 6.8 for this year, next 6 years.
Yeah.
I mean, the last 2 years of that deal might be rough.
I was gonna say, I will say, like, it was a long contract that San Jose gave him at the age he was at. So the last two or three years of that deal, depending on how his career kind of goes, could be a little bit rough. And it'd be nice to see Vegas with a little bit of a boat anchor over there, just because of how many freaking moves they can always seem to make.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, as much as it sucks that he goes to Vegas, I obviously do wish that Hurdle has a fantastic rest of his career. I hope I mean, whether it's with Vegas or not at this point, I hope he does. I'm happy that he gets a chance to play playoff games. It is worth noting, he dealt with those knee injuries in his rookie year, and that's currently what he's dealing with is a knee injury. But so hopefully, I hope that it sounds like he's going to be back by the end of the regular season to get a couple, games in with the Golden Knights. But obviously, wish him nothing but the best. I still very much dislike Vegas, but I guess that kind of is a nice part. If they go back to back, there's at least
it will feel good.
Some
to see
positive you can take about it. Yeah, and it's nice looking at being like, what, 3 teams that really beefed it up this year is the Dallas Stars, the Carolina Hurricanes, and Vegas. So hopefully, seeing a Sharks legend going to win a cup is kind of the best that Sharks fans can hope for right now. As the only thing they have to look forward to in the meantime is the draft lottery. So
yeah, and God help us if Chicago wins that fucking lottery, man.
Oh boy, I don't even want to think about it because I don't know what I would do. I really don't know. I don't know what I'd do.
It annoys me because we're in the exact fucking same spot as last year. We're all sitting around going, God damn it, Chicago's gonna win it. They don't have a great chance. They're gonna fucking win it. And then they won it.
Yeah.
And it's, oh my God. Dude, it's self-fulfilling prophecy. We're gonna sit here for the next 4 months going, they're gonna fucking win it, aren't they? And then we're gonna get our hopes up, and then it's just gonna happen. They're gonna win it, and it's gonna fucking suck so hard. And Mark Stone's gonna go on LTIR, and then Chicago will win a 3rd first overall pick somehow, even though it's not allowed anymore.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Also,
is
like,
gonna
if you
keep
think
happening.
about it, it's like right now, San Jose and Chicago are tied. Chicago, I think, would be way above San Jose if A, Bedard didn't get injured, B, if Taylor Hall didn't get injured and be out for the season, and C, if Corey Perry didn't do the shit he did and get terminated.
To be fair,
I think Chicago would be so much higher than
Hurdle and
San Jose's at.
Hurdle and Couture have also been injured, so they'd have more points.
But Couture's been out all year, really. Like we kind of knew that going into the season that he what was going to be a long term. But I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, like I said, the only person I'm more upset with than Mike Greer is 7-year-old me for choosing this team to follow. But at the end of the day, big dead money Mike, because he loves his dead money on the books. I'm gonna have faith in him and hope that this is all part of the plan to bring Celebrini home, and that's really like that's the big part of it. You get Celebrini,
plan to go second,
turns it around quick.
Who's planned to go 2nd and 3rd? Like, are they still looking good? Like, surely they're higher than top 6 guys, right?
Could go anywhere. Like it's a Celebrini 1, and then all these mock drafts, like
the next from 4 to 5 is just a 2 to 5.
From 2 to 6, it's a pick 'em based on, do you want a defenseman? Do you want the smaller sized skilled centerman? Do you want kind of the big strong Quentin Byfield like centerman? Do you want the small speedy sniper? What kind of, do you want the offensive defenseman? Do you want the big 6'6" defenseman? Like it's literally, after Celebrini, you have different players that are all so different from each other. And so it really comes down to what do you need? And I think for the Sharks, if they, worst case scenario, if Chicago gets 1 and the Sharks move down to 2, I think they're who they take.
That's not quite the worst case scenario.
I guess, yeah, the Sharks would actually move down to 3 and Anaheim would jump up to 2. Then I would,
yeah,
no one would hear from me anymore. I'd walk straight in the ocean.
Yeah, that's no good.
But the biggest thing for the Sharks is that Pittsburgh pick. Because I believe if Pittsburgh, where they're sitting at right now, if San Jose ends up getting that pick from Pittsburgh this year and it's 11th or 12th overall, the Sharks probably end up taking one of the 3 forwards there, depending on which one they want more. Because I think they get more value from taking a defenseman in that 11, 12, 13, as opposed to doing the opposite and taking a defenseman first and then a forward. I think they're better off taking the very high upside forward and then still getting a very solid defenseman in that early teens pick. So, it's really, all we can do now is ride out the rest of the season and, just be happy about the memories we have with Tomas Hertl, because I mean, at the end of the day, he's always going to be a San Jose legend. He's in the record book in so many ways for that team. And
would
you know what?
It's retire his number there.
That's a thing I don't think they do, because they
didn't
win a cup with him there. He didn't, win any major awards. Like, it's just at the end of the day, he was just a player, really. Like, and that sucks to say, but it's not like they didn't win a cup with him. He didn't win a Calder or an Art Ross or a Brock.
I don't think that should matter. For the Hockey Hall of Fame, I get it.
In terms of the term that he was with the team.
That's fair, I guess.
Because he didn't even make it to the age of 30. Like a guy like Joe Pavelski, 100%. Because by the time he left, he was already, I think, 35 or 36. He was a captain. He was kind of the franchise player, kind of alongside Thornton and Marlowe. Hertl, I don't see it. Couture, I think is probably going to happen.
I think Couture should. Between how long he's been there, the captaincy, and also his insane playoff runs.
Yeah, like scored some of the biggest goals in franchise history.
People do not look at playoff stats enough when talking about how good a player is. They always go and they look and they're like, this guy had this save percentage throughout the year. He's not a top 10 goalie. And it's like, what about this 935 he put up in the playoffs over 11 games? And it's like, yeah, that matters. We're always talking about how important the cup is. Playoffs where you win it.
Yeah, 100%. But no, like, I always kind of had the mindset that Hertl was going to be a Shark for life. It always kind of seemed like that's the way he felt, the way the team felt, and even the way Mike Greer said today when talking to the owner. He reported that he even admitted, like, this season has gone worse than they envisioned. I think that's kind of why you see Hertl get moved. But no,
I wonder if he's talking about Bedard getting injured.
Yeah, maybe. But no, as much as I like Hertl, I don't see. I don't see his jersey getting retired. I see it potentially being, if he doesn't go back home to Czechia after he's done in the NHL retires, I could see him, going back and living in San Jose and going back there. But yeah, for a jersey retirement, unfortunately, I don't see it. He wasn't there long enough, and in the time he was there, it's just not a lot to show for it. But I guess, you never know when you've got someone who was a fan favorite the way he was. Like, he was on I think there was more outcry after this trade than there was when Carlson was traded, when Pavelski walked, when Jumbo walked. Like, this one stung for the fans. Yeah. So
I think a lot of it is
because the route of pleasing the fans and doing it, but
you could kind of see the writing on the walls for a lot of those other ones. This one was a bit of a blindside.
But the thing is, whether we want to admit or not, it was probably going to happen in the off season. And I think Mike Greer took the approach of rip the Band-Aid off now and then be like, hey, look, when we win the draft lottery, hope this softens the blow, rather than, winning the draft lottery, getting Celebrini, being like, oh, can you imagine him and Hurdle together? And then it's like, oh, Hurdle's now trading. It's like, well, why? So, I get it. It sucks, but it did need to happen. It just sucks that the return is what it was. But we push forward. We're a miserable fan base, but we soldier on. So
when you can internalize it and know your shit, it's a lot easier to sling your own shit at other people.
Yeah.
so at least there's that. You kind of become a little bit invincible when you internalize it. That's why Toronto fans are so miserable, because they get excited every March, April.
Yeah.
And we by the way, we probably should have mentioned it a bit earlier, but we kind of figured we were going to talk a long time about this one, just because obviously Burundi is a massive Sharks fan. This is one of the biggest franchise trades in history for the Sharks, as well as just a massive trade for this deadline.
It honestly might actually be it might be the biggest deal for the Sharks, where they're trading a player away.
Looking back
up there.
Back in hindsight, I think the Erik Karlsson trade probably, now that we know what happened with the picks. But I think the moment,
I mean
where
the Sharks are like trading away like a player. Because really, the Sharks just kind of traded away draft picks. One on like Karlsson was the big piece. This is one where the Sharks are moving the big piece. Yeah, out. Like I know there's other ones, because, like the Nolan one you could argue, or
Thornton was
Kiprusoff, but like
Thornton was pretty old at that point when he got traded.
No, he just walked.
Thornton just walked. I thought just Pavelski did. Wow.
No, they just didn't resign me. He went to Toronto, and then the Patrick Marleau one, when he was traded to Pittsburgh. I mean, that was all after already.
He was like 38.
He came back for his second stint with the Sharks, and he was already up there in age. It was more about doing right by the player and like, hey, you know what, we suck. Go have a chance to win a cup, and Pittsburgh got they got bounced in that playing round to Columbus, so that was tough. We kind of knew that. That's kind of why I saved it to the end, because I kind of knew it was the one we were going to talk about the most, because aside from the Gensel deal, this was kind of the big one, and there's always that one deal at the deadline that's out of nowhere, and this ended up being it.
This was as big as the Gensel deal, but also we've been waiting for the Gensel deal for weeks, months. Nobody saw this coming.
No.
I
really don't have much more to say on that. It's just grieving process, and praying every night that the Celebrini can come home and soften the blow.
Yeah, that would be a very nice consolation prize.
But it's Willie Mecklen's team right now, so let's see what he can do with him and all the AHL squad.
So I guess that's about all we have for this one. We're just coming up on 3 fucking hours.
You guys are getting an absolute treat today from us. What a marathon.
It's a trade deadline. That's just how it is. We could have split it up into a couple episodes, but like we want to get as much info and as much of our coverage out there as possible on the day of it happening. We want to get it out there immediately, despite the fact that if we go another 15 minutes, it'll officially be tomorrow.
Yeah, well, and like, I think we kind of know that trade deadline, and I don't even really think the draft, probably free agency, are kind of the 2 times of the year where it's probably going to be a big fat episode, because there's so much. Whereas, the draft, we can kind of break it down to maybe 2 smaller ones.
We might do a live stream even if the timing works out this summer for the draft or for the free agency day.
Maybe
the deadline comes
a bit longer.
Obviously not in the summer, and it's also it was on a Friday, so it just kind of didn't work out for us earlier in the day on the Friday. But we would like to do a couple of more live things like that, covering some of those bigger days, or even if we're just live tweeting it as it's happening and put out a podcast right afterwards. Yeah, we're definitely going to try and on those big important days be more as live and kind of quickly covering it as we possibly can.
Yeah, exactly. That's why, this episode isn't coming out on our usual scheduled time on Friday, because we wanted to kind of do a whole, for the most part of the trade deadline and the big pieces, kind of do it all as one. So it's a bit of a longer one, but hey, you know what? You throw it on when you're in the shower, when you're on your way to work, you're cooking, you're making love, whatever you want to do. You can throw this on, and you got 3 phenomenal hours of hockey content. And I didn't even lose my shit. I thought I was going to lose my shit and say some bad stuff about Mike Greer, and I didn't. I kept my shit together. I held my cool.
And you know what? Props for that.
It's not easy. Let me tell you, it's not easy. It's not easy.
People listening being upset and talking about the future of the Sharks while they're making love.
Hey, you know what? You never know.
You're just trying to bang one out, and this dude's talking about hockey trades.
Talking about Big Dead Money Mike, my man. But yeah, I think. What do you want to do? Do you want to do the? Do you want to do it tomorrow? We'll do the.
Yeah, we'll do the
leaders. Yeah.
We'll do all the leaders and standings on the one tomorrow. We've had this one going on long enough.
Yeah.
I'm not even avoiding talking about the top scorers in the league. It's not even about that. Okay.
Yeah. We'll be back. This one will obviously be out tomorrow from the time we're recording it. And then in the next day or two, we will be coming out with a second one, kind of focusing on kind of the smaller deals throughout the deadline. We will be covering every deal. We just kind of focusing on the big ones. And then aside from that, maybe we'll kind of do an outlook on where teams are looking at going forward throughout the remainder, about 20 games left of the regular season, who kind of jumps the rankings, who kind of took a dip from it, and all kinds of different fun stuff. But if you guys enjoyed, joining through this marathon with us here, always feel free to throw a follow to our socials. We are on Instagram and Twitter at SEU Hockey. We have been quite a bit more frequently active over on there, so feel free to throw us a follow. Come say hi. If you have any stuff from the deadline or questions you have or stuff you want us to talk about, feel free to let us know, because we're always open to getting engagement from you guys and hearing what you guys want us to talk about. Yeah, I think that's it. Unless you got anything else.
Yeah, I guess once we maybe if we ever get enough interaction with the fans, with our porn bots over on Twitter. Maybe before we do the standings and the scoring leaders at the end of each episode, maybe we'll do one where we answer a couple of questions. If we can get some consistent engagement and stuff, we'll start doing something like that, because I think it could be a lot of fun to do a bit of a questions corner type deal, or answer a couple things there. I think that could be fun.
Yeah, so, for sure.
We could start doing that at some point here.
Yeah, there we go. You heard it here first. That's what we're looking towards. That's what we're hoping to do. But yeah, with that, oh man, I'm gonna go cry because Hurdle just dropped his goodbye response on Twitter. So I'm gonna go cry with that. Mike Greer, I hope you actually do have a good night. I hope you sleep well. Big Dead Money Mike. But with that, once again, thank you to everybody for listening, and we will catch you guys in the next one.